Hello everybody, thanks for joining the stream, I appreciate it. So going back through some of the comments here. Oh, Crane, do I plan on, what do I think about a multi-class for Carlite? Paladin is a very interesting class to multi-class with. In that really the two main stats for Paladin are strength or dexterity, if you're going to go with a dex Paladin build, and charisma. Constitution is not an afterthought, but it is the third tier, or the second tier of stats that you put points into upon build, whereas with a barbarian, you really need to be either strength or dex, and heavy in constitution as well. So doing a paladin barbarian is certainly doable. The classes just don't have a lot of secondary overlap with each other that makes the ability points fully complement each other. But no, it's an interesting combination. I haven't played it in tabletop, but certainly interesting. I probably don't plan on doing anything like that myself, but I'm sure other content creators will be focusing on off-script type of builds and that sort of stuff. What oath do I plan on taking? You're just going to have to wait another 10 minutes. And we'll go through it, Oda. But yeah, I don't want to give out any spoilers right yet. You'll see it when we get to the stream. I have made a couple of changes to my original plan, but yeah, the oath was always the same as what I'm going to take. But yeah, you'll see it here coming up. So. Hey Philip, hey Alex, thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. Yeah, that's looking at the comments, that's a very common thing with console versus PC. There's obviously a cost difference between the two of those things, and the requirements to be able to run this on PC can get a little intense. So rather than either fully upgrading or, getting a new PC just for something like this, then the console, if you already have one, makes perfect sense. So I still do console games. I was on console for a very long time. I didn't even own a PC until about 3 years ago. Everything was on Macintosh or Apple and console. So, but once I moved over for a couple of different games that I also play to a PC, then it just made sense to keep this on a PC as well. Is this going to be a 100% playthrough? That is an interesting question. And I can't really answer it for you, Paramal. The reason for that is that if you've looked through my previous live streams, my live streams are very tutorial oriented. They're not like a lot of the more major content creators for Baldur's Gate 3, where they just play through the game. You learn kind of as you go, but you're expected to know how a lot of the stuff works due to their guide videos and that sort of stuff. My videos are, and I'm not saying that's bad at all. The content creators are great, but my playthroughs are much more tutorial oriented. So I explain my decisions quite a bit. I explain the background mechanics in D&D that carry over into the game. So it takes quite a bit longer to go through a full version here than it would be if you just sat down and played it yourself. So it took 16 to 18 weeks to go through Act 1, or the Prologue and Act 1 in early access. They've added quite a bit of new content into Act 1. They cut down the Prologue, but added quite a bit of new content into Act 1, so if I just extrapolate that out to 4 acts, that is a full year at least worth of playthrough. And it's really going to depend on what people want to see. I always pay attention. As a smaller streamer, I'm very able to read all of the comments and respond to as many of them as I possibly can, and we'll just look at the content or the comments and see what people want. If they want a full all the way playthrough on this, or they'd like to see me change to something else, then we'll see. So it's kind of the same thing that with the Bard. The plan with the Bard playthrough is just right now to play it through the end of Act 1 in the full version and then see what happens. So we're going to do the same thing here, and then see if people want me to continue it through the full playthrough, but I'd be happy to do it. What's the difference between hide and cunning hide for rogues? The difference is whether or not you're looking at an action versus a bonus action, and whether it's going to apply in all cases. Yeah, hide is a little bit different than like cunning, action, dash, and that sort of stuff, where dash is an action, and the cunning action dash is a bonus action. So oh, thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. Yeah, and opinions, sorry, I hit my mic there. So opinions vary, and I completely understand if some people don't like the slower playstyle and the explanations of, behind everything that is happening. And I certainly get that. So I'm not trying to cater to any particular audience. I hope that people, get as much out of it as they want and they can, but I do want to make sure that we're giving everybody, even people who have no D&D experience whatsoever, the opportunity to have fun. And the best way to have fun is to understand how things are going, so that you can make it easier on yourself to progress through the playthroughs. So. Yeah, no worries, Pete. If anybody has any questions as we're going through, I try and answer them. And that's the other thing that's taking longer with my playthroughs now. Going back to is this going to be a 100% playthrough, is that I've seen some incredible growth in the number of viewers on the live stream. So I always try and answer questions that are, relevant to the playstyle or playthrough that we're going through at that particular moment. So it takes a little bit longer to go through those questions as well, but I'm certainly happy to do that. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and as long as I'm in the spot where I'm like I say, a relatively small streamer, and I can help people out by answering the questions I'm going to, even if it takes a little bit longer to go through a particular playthrough. And yeah, Philip, the VODs are always going to be up. I always add chapter markers to the videos, so to help navigate through them and that sort of stuff. So if you don't remember something, you can always go refer to it back on the videos and see it's there. Once we've now gotten things started, this is my third playthrough I've got going simultaneously now, and as I start going through my personal playthrough more, then we'll start seeing more explanation videos and guide videos and that sort of stuff as we go. So just building up the video content for it right now to hopefully be able to release videos on a regular basis. No worries, Sophie. That's kind of funny. Normally it's the exact opposite. My experience with tabletop is, helping me understand the mechanics better here in the game, but it's certainly one of those things where it's so easy to get into a campaign and so easy to play different characters and that sort of stuff in the game, where that can translate back to tabletop campaigns as well. So yes, Alex, we stream, the live streams are always 3 hours. After we get past that point, I start getting a little tired, my voice starts getting worn out, and everybody, you guys, I'm sure, get tired of listening to me talk. So we go from 2 to 5 Central Daylight Time on Sundays, and from noon to 3 Central Daylight Time on Saturdays for the 2 different public playthroughs that we have going right now. Yeah, I know, Bathory, it's insane to me. It really is. Like I say, it's the channel's seen incredible growth here in the past month, and I'm very thankful to all of you. All of you are the reason for it, so thank you very much for it. I appreciate it. Antonio, you'll have to wait another couple of minutes here, and you will have your question answered for you. Don't want to give out any spoilers here, just 40 seconds before we start. But yeah, you'll be seeing it really quickly as we go through the build. No worries, Larian. I appreciate that. That's what I hope we're getting out of these live streams, is that people are learning the mechanics to hopefully make their playthroughs a lot more enjoyable. You can't just run around and click on things and go hack at it, but knowing how things work can make things a lot easier and hence more enjoyable as you go through. Yeah, we'll see, Alex. You never know. All right, everybody, we're going to get ready to start here. So, again, thanks for coming. Welcome, everyone, to today's live stream, episode number 1 of our Baldur's Gate 3 Paladin gameplay series. I'm Commander Jorval, and I want to thank you for coming along on our journey today. So, on a couple of admin notes, this is starting from scratch at the beginning of the prologue in the full version of the game. It's not like the Bard live stream that was live streamed yesterday, where we played the first portion through early access, and then your comments really persuaded me to play through the full version and pick up where we left off. This one is going to be from the very start. You're going to be able to see how character creation has now changed dramatically, and how the prologue has changed dramatically, and then getting into the early portions of Act 1 if we have time for that. So we'll kind of see how it goes and go from there. So there is no recap. So with that, everyone knows that I have stressed that I'm going to be playing a Paladin this playthrough. And I had said in a couple of live streams it was going to be a Dragonborn Paladin, and we're going to explore that as we jump right into the game and start off with the cutscene for a brand new game here. All of my live streams are going to be, the public live streams are going to be played on balanced. And that is just so that we have, because I'm not saving and reloading, I'm not save scumming throughout my live streams. Whatever happens, happens. Whatever the dice say is going to happen is whatever we're going to accept. So, trying not to make it extraordinarily hard on myself with Tactician. My personal playthrough is off-stream, is on Tactician, so I'm getting a good view of what the difficulty's like. But all of my public ones are going to be balanced. So the Bard one that's currently going on and the start of this one are going to be under the balanced gameplay. You can change this at any time, though, throughout your game, and it will instantly adjust the difficulty settings based on that. So, but we're going to play with balanced here, and we're going to go ahead and start. Alright, so the same intro cutscene as we've seen previously. I'm not going to reset the tutorials. I will be your tutorial guide throughout this playthrough. What companions am I planning to take with me, Jerry? You're actually going to see that. We're going to talk about it through the playthrough here, but don't want to give any spoilers away at this particular point. We'll get to see it, though. So now you get, for those of you who haven't seen it before, experienced it before, you get your first look now at the new character creation screen. And the big thing that you notice is that you are able to play as one of the origin characters. Okay? So you have a set background and story, you have a set timeline that you're playing with and things that have happened in the past to you, but you can play as any of those previous characters that we saw in the game. Or you can create your own custom character, which obviously is what we're going to do. So for our race, I had mentioned it several times before that I was going to play a Dragonborn Paladin, and the reason for that is because my background comes from tabletop, and in tabletop, the Dragonborn race gets a racial ability score bonus of +2 to strength and a +1 to constitution, or to charisma, which makes it a very well-suited choice from a race perspective for a paladin, which those two ability scores are the two determining scores for what they do in combat. So that was the plan, and then Larian decided to, at the fairly last minute, introduce one of the major components of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which was an expansion to the D&D 5e rules. It was put out in 2020, where instead of the races getting a +2 to a particular score and a +1 to another score, you can now allocate that +2 to anything and that +1 to anything. They didn't implement anything else out of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything rules expansion, but they did implement that. It was a controversial choice by them, and not in the original set of D&D 5e rules, but certainly is in keeping with Tasha's. So what that means from a practical perspective is that it doesn't really matter what race you pick now. You're able to allocate that +2 to any particular ability score and that +1 to any other ability score. The thing that gets nerfed a little bit is there are two races that used to be able to get a +4. And instead of a +2 and a +1, you would be able to get a +2 and then a +1 and a +1, or something very similar to that to give you a total bonus of 4. That's no longer possible. So every race gets a +2 and a +1 to put wherever they want. So now it becomes, in selecting your race, more of either a role-playing thing or a race feature thing. So the Dragonborn, you can see the race features, we get a base movement speed of 9 meters, which is fine, but it's really about your sub-race that you pick, which gives you an action and a sub-race feature to go along with it. And these are very common things. It's either cold, it's acid, fire, or lightning damage, or lightning-based actions and features. Okay, so whether you're resistant to that type of damage and the breath weapon that you have available to you and how that breath weapon works. The thing about it, though, is that if you're going into a really heavy damage build, there are other races which have more race features that might benefit you. First thing is that the Dragonborn do not have dark vision, so they can't see in the dark, whereas a half-orc can. The other thing about a half-orc is that they have relentless endurance, so if you ever get dropped to 0 hit points, you don't go down. You instead go back to 1 hit point and are able to stay in the fight for a little bit longer because of that. And then they also have an ability called Savage Attacks, which means whenever you land a crit with a melee weapon, instead of doubling the amount of damage that you do triple the amount of damage. So half-orcs now with Tasha's ability score allotment, become your main go-to race for damage output and survivability. Whereas previously, with their half-orc ability scores going into strength, a +2 in strength and a +1 in constitution, it might not have served you best for a paladin build. But with us being able to allocate those wherever we want, a half-orc becomes a lot more viable for that. So instead of doing a Dragonborn, I'm going to switch to a half-orc. And that is, I know that may be a disappointment to some people who are expecting me to play a Dragonborn because of it, but because of Tasha's, it just doesn't make any sense to not pick a half-orc when I'm going for a melee damage-based build. So that's the big change that you're going to hear about first, is that I'm going to be playing as a half-orc. So for my class, we're obviously going to start out in Paladin. Now, I told you in the description that we are going to be multi-classing. There are a couple of other classes here which synergize very, very well with a Paladin. Unfortunately, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, the 2017, I think, expansion to D&D 5e rules is not implemented in the game. In that rule set, you got a bunch of new subclasses, and some other rules, but a bunch of new subclasses. And the Hexblade Warlock is the go-to meta, so to speak, multi-class with a Paladin. Being able to be a charisma-based melee damage dealer with those two classes is just incredible. We don't have that here. We don't have the Hexblade subclass for the Warlock in the game, but we are going to be multi-classing much later on, after level 5, into adding a second class. And whether that's a Warlock, whether that's a Bard, whether that's a Sorcerer, we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it. But for now, the first 5 levels, at least until we get our extra attack, are going to be all Paladin. And we will then move on to multi-classing after that point. So, with Paladin, you get the bread and butter everybody knows about it Paladin skill, which is Lay on Hands. This is your healing ability. It's based on the number of Lay on Hands charges you had, very similar to superiority die or rage charges or bardic inspiration charges that we have on other classes. You have a limited number of them available to you each long rest, and you're able to use up to that limit for Lay on Hands. The other action that you have is Divine Sense. Now, Divine Sense is a bonus action which allows you to get advantage on attack rolls against Celestials, Fiends, and Undead. We've already talked in multiple live streams about how important advantage and disadvantage are. So, being able to get advantage using a bonus action for 2 turns against any of those 3 subtypes is really good. If you're fighting against any of those, being able to give yourself automatic advantage for 2 turns is just, it's, like I say, it's a huge benefit. Paladins are going to be relying on the ability to get advantage on their targets to be able to dish out huge amounts of single target burst damage. For engagement length damage, your Barbarian is still the biggest damage dealer. With Rage, they are able to keep that high damage going against multiple targets throughout a long period of time throughout an engagement. Paladins are able to get a lot higher burst damage against a single target in a single or 2 turns than any other class in the game. So if you find a boss enemy inside a room, you sick your Paladin on it. But then once that boss enemy is dead, they're going to be dealing fairly standard amounts of damage to the rest of the enemies that are on the battlefield, because they may have used up all of their abilities to give out that burst damage. Whereas a Barbarian may not be able to take out that boss enemy as fast as a Paladin, but they will be able to then take out the remainder of the enemies quite a bit faster than the Paladin can. So that's the difference between the two. But when it comes to single target burst damage, there is no parallel to what the Paladin is theoretically capable of doing. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about your playthrough and how to do it. stick your Paladin on the biggest guy, and then deal with the crowd control with everybody else. So for class features, you also gain channel oath charges, and this is going to deal with something that we're going to explain a little bit more, but it's, again, just like Lay on Hands, you get a separate group of charges that are available to you to use a couple of different abilities based upon your subclass as you go through it. So these are replaced by short rests, whereas your Lay on Hands are only for replenished at long rests. So you get these back every short rest, and that can be very important to realize, especially if you can have somebody in your party that can help give you or simulate a short rest, like a bard. So instead of being limited to just 2 short rests for every long rest, a bard can give you that 3rd short rest, and you can get your channel oath charges back that way. So think about the synergies when you're going through it as well. So here are the 3 subclasses that are currently in the full version of the game. In early access, we had Oath of the Ancients and Oath of Devotion. And not only does this affect your abilities in what actions you have, but it also affects your tenets. The thing about a paladin, and this is what I'm very interested to explore in the game, is that if you do an action that is against your tenets, the oath that you took to your deity is broken. And there are some fairly severe consequences to that when you do that. So for instance, the Oath of Devotion, these are your knight in shining armor, never lie, never do anything wrong type of paladins. If you go up and you start lying every time you do something, or you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, then you can, or you decide not to protect a weak and side with somebody that is going to take advantage of the weak, then you're going to probably break your oath fairly quickly. So selecting your subclass is not necessarily just about the benefits that you get from an action standpoint, it's also about how you role-play the game. And this is the one class in the game that really expects you, well, except the Dark Urge, expects you to play your game in a role-playing perspective, and not just do whatever you think is best for the power or level or whatever of your character in the video game. It expects you to follow a set of rules. And the difference here in all of these is really your action and what's going to happen with your tenet. And your Oath of Devotion is, for the most part, going to give you the least leeway to do whatever you want. Oath of the Ancients is more your nature-based kind of druid crossover type of paladin. So if you go burning trees and killing animals, just wantonly all over the place, you're probably going to break your oath. Okay. Oath of Vengeance is really what it says on the tin. You set aside the do-gooder aspect of you to basically deliver justice in any way that you see fit. This is like the Punisher comic book character of paladins. So if whatever they see as an injustice, they have to go right that wrong. They have to go chastise the evil and wicked amongst you. And they're driven that way. So you have a few more, or a little bit more leeway in how you pursue that vengeance, but it gives you some more opportunities to not break your oath by doing things that you might really want to do in the game. So this is how we're going to go, is the Oath of Vengeance. We will explore the other oath, so to speak, or the other subclass in the game, which is Oathbreaker, at some point, because all of these things are hard-coded in the game. In a tabletop game, your DM will decide whether or not you broke your oath. And there's a lot of leeway there, whereas the game they have to hard code this into how the game is written. So I'm very anxious to see how well I'm able to hold my oath, and whether I do something that I think is in keeping with my oath, but the game is hard-coded to break it. And I have no doubt that we are going to get into a situation and we're going to see the Oathbreaker Paladin at some point. And I'm probably going to be yelling and cursing about the fact that the game made me break my oath for doing something. But we will cross that bridge when we come to it. So with the Oath of Vengeance, you get an action called Inquisitor's Might. And Inquisitor's Might uses that channel oath charge that we talked about previously. So you start off with one of those, and if you use that with a bonus action, you are able to then, for the next 2 turns, either you or an ally, your weapon attacks are going to deal 2 additional radiant damage, and they have the possibility to daze a target. We've talked about daze before, but basically dazed means that they have disadvantage on wisdom saving throws. They can't take reactions, which includes attacks of opportunity, and they lose the dexterity bonus to their armor class. So if you can daze a target and then have your cleric or your wizard cast a spell that has a wisdom saving throw, they have disadvantage on that saving throw. So another synergy to think about in the back of your head, that if you can daze a target, they're now open to wisdom-based spell effects a lot more than they were previous. So, but it's a very, very good channel oath charge to have, and I'm happy to see it play out as part of the Oath of Vengeance. So the background. So here's where we get into the combination of skills, abilities, and proficiencies. And you can see over here at this side, and I apologize, I know there's a lot of comments. I'm kind of going through the build here and explaining this and focusing on it rather than dealing with the comments. I apologize for that, but I'll be going back and dealing with some of the comments after we're done, once we finish the explanation. But you can see that we have weapon proficiencies for all weapons. We have armor proficiencies for all armors and shields. Right now, the skills that we have proficiency with are Athletics, Sleight of Hand, Deception, Intimidation, and Persuasion. Okay? That is because some of those skills come from the background that we are choosing. So, right now, if we go to abilities and we look at our skill proficiencies, you can see that our race grants us Intimidation proficiency. Okay, so that is given to us by the fact that we're a half-orc. They're just intimidating. So they, based upon my charisma score, they're going to get a +2 bonus to their intimidation checks. We're getting deception and sleight of hand from the background choice that we are making. But as you change your background, those skill proficiencies change. Okay? So the 2 main scores that we have, or ability scores here for the Paladin, one of them you can see with the star above it. That's the primary ability, and that's strength. The other one's going to be charisma. And these numbers are actually fairly close to what we're going to end up using. But the total numbers that you get on these checks, you can see, for instance, athletics. Athletics is based on strength. Right now, if we have an athletics check, we're going to get +5. And that's because we have proficiency in athletics, and we have a +3 bonus from our strength. So your ability scores and your background choices here are going to modify the numbers that you have here. Okay? So for us, I'm looking at skills that are very useful throughout the game, as well as things that are going to help me in things like dialogue checks, combat checks, and that sort of stuff. Knowing that we already get intimidation, that's a dialogue choice skill check. We already have proficiency in that. We can start looking at some of these others and seeing what we do. I'm not going to need sleight of hand or stealth. I'm not meaning to be the stealthy guy. I'm the run in and bonk it with my hammer or sword guy. Nothing subtle about that. So for Soldier, we get Athletics and Intimidation. Well, I've already got Intimidation from my race, being a half-orc. So if I take Soldier, I'm getting Athletics, but I'm not getting a second score here. Something to keep in mind, because now I'm down to 4 skills I'm proficient with. Whereas with Urchin, I have 5, because Sleight of Hand and Stealth I don't get from my race. Okay? So Soldier's great, giving me Athletics, but I already have Intimidation from another source. Sage, I don't care about Arcana and History. Outlander, I'm now getting Athletics, which is very good, and Survival, which is Wisdom-based. So now I'm back up to 5 skills that I have proficiency with. So Noble has History and Persuasion. Persuasion is good for dialogue choices. You might not always have Intimidation as a dialogue choice, so having Persuasion as well as Intimidation can certainly be helpful in dialogues that you're going to run into. But History, I don't really need it. It's an intelligence-based stat. My intelligence is going to be very, very low, so I wouldn't be really getting too useful skills there. So Guild Artisan has Insight and Persuasion. Persuasion, again, is useful. Insight, being a wisdom skill, is useful for a lot of different things. Being able to tell if people are lying, all of that sort of stuff. So Guild Artisan, maybe. We'll think about that. Folk Hero, you have Animal Handling and Survival, both of which are wisdom skills. Still useful in their own rights, but maybe other things to look at. Deception and Stealth, we don't care about. Deception, Sleight of Hand, we don't care about. Insight and Religion, we don't. Acrobatics and Performance, not really our thing. So we're really looking at Outlander to get 5 skills with proficiency. Guild Artisan, again with 5 skills and proficiency. And you're really changing Athletics and Survival, which is Wisdom and Strength skills, to a Wisdom and Charisma skill. Or Soldier, which is only 4, but we're getting Athletics again. So I think that we're going to go with Outlander for our background choice. To explain that, Athletics is really how easy it is for you to shove enemies and how easy it is for you to resist being shoved. With the verticality in this game, being able to push people off of ledges is incredibly useful. For anybody who's played through the early access, being able to knock the Githyanki off the top of the bridge onto the lower level and having them take 20 points of damage is just huge. It's massive. So being able to easily shove somebody and resist being shoved off of those high places is great. Survival is less important in the playthrough. It does have its places in the playthrough, but it's more of a passive stat that while you're walking around and you're interacting with your environment, how well are you able to notice things as you're walking around? So certainly nothing to, shake a stick at. We get Religion proficiency from the fact that we're a Paladin. Intimidation is from half-orc, and Persuasion is because, and we'll go through these here, I guess we can look at them again. So, and right now we get to pick, we're getting Survival and Intimidation. Religion is picked for us and Persuasion is picked for us. We can now pick 2 more skills to get proficiency in out of this group of 4 that are here. Okay. So Religion is not something that we want to focus on. We don't need it. Okay. We can pick Insight or we can pick Medicine, both wisdom skills. Neither one of them are great. Then we can also focus on Persuasion. Well, we've got 2 skills to get proficiency in. We might as well put it into Persuasion. So now we have a +4 in Persuasion and a +4 in Intimidation. We actually have more, a +4 in Intimidation. So either one of those 2 dialogue options, we're going to get a big bonus for when we're just talking to people throughout our playthrough. So Persuasion is something that's good to have. Out of the remaining 3, Religion, Insight, and Medicine, I'll pick Insight. Religion doesn't really matter for me. I have other people that are going to be intelligence-based. Between these 2, it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. But those are the 2 that I'm going to pick. So these are now the 5 skills that we're going to have proficiency with. And now we can look at our ability scores. And again, this is Tasha's Cauldron of Everything in the +2 and +1. We can assign a +2 to any skill that we want. It doesn't matter. It's no longer based upon race, and we can do the same thing with our +1 skill. Okay, so here, for me, I'm going to go the way that the Dragonborn originally would have it, which is a +2 in strength and a +1, a +2 in strength and a +1 in charisma. Okay. So at that point, we now need to start focusing on our second tier stat, which is Constitution. Intelligence is going to be a dump stat for us. We don't care about it. Dexterity is useful for two things. One is your initiative roll, meaning when combat starts, how early up in the combat list of who goes first are you. The higher your dexterity, the higher bonus you get toward that roll, and more likely you are to roll first. The other thing that dexterity does is it adds to your armor class if you're wearing light or medium armor. We are not. We are going to be up front tank wearing the biggest set of plate mail that we can as early as we can type of person, and in that case you get no bonus to your armor class from dexterity. So I want to get me to a neutral +0 to dexterity checks. That's going to hurt me a little bit in my initiative rolls, but I'm not going to be wasting any points on dexterity to try and up my armor class because I'm going to be wearing heavy armor. So now I have 2 ability points left to use that are available to me, and now I can up my Constitution to 14. Constitution at 13 is a +1 to Constitution checks and saving throws, and how many hit points that I have. Once it goes to 14, I now get a +2 to all of those checks as well as my hit points. You can see I'm now at 12 hit points, as opposed to when I'm at 13, I'm at 11. And that bonus is going to apply to every time I level up. So this is the distribution that I'm going to use for the playthrough. Charisma and strength are odd, because when I get to a certain point in the game, I'm going to be able to maybe increase a score permanently by a single stat point. And then there's another point in the game where I can take 2 individual skills and up them by 1 point each, or I can take a single skill and I can up it by 2 points. So if I get to that point, I could take strength to 18 and get a +4 to my strength, which is damage and strength checks, and a 16 on charisma, which would go from +2 to +3. Or I could leave my charisma at +2 and I could take my strength to 19, and then that +1 ability item, I could raise it to 20. So you could theoretically get my primary damage dealing stat of strength up to 20 fairly early in the game. And like I said, we're going to cross that bridge when we come to it, but I think it's very prudent for me to leave both strength and charisma as odd numbers here, and everything else as even. Okay? So now we get into editing appearance, and this has changed dramatically since early access. So your regular male or female, your voice actors.
Where to next?
All the even ones are female, all the odd ones are male.
What was that?
Okay, so you can pick whichever one you want. You have a different facial traits, which is basically your tusks and your ear shape and general outline, of your head, so to speak. So if you want to go less, intimidating looking, you have the option, or, full on half-orc type of look, you certainly can. So your skin color allows you to choose any of them. Scarring, maturity, how old and how wrinkled you look, your freckle quantity, freckle intensity, vitiligo pigmentation, for those who are experienced with that affliction in humans. It's displayed here in the game. So there's a huge number of options and available to you in your selection here. Okay, so your body types here are basically the choice between male and female again, but your identity can be different because those two don't necessarily have to be in line with each other. So when you're here, you can also, over here at the side, go to body art. You can choose tattoos that you want, and then you can get into the serious selections, detail selections of heterochromia, different colored eyes that you may want, makeup choices, hair choices and colors, as well as highlights and all of that sort of stuff. And you can see literally dozens of these choices, as well as facial hair selections. Okay, so you get access to all of these options in here. And Jap, I am interested, once we get out of the character selection here and creation, then I'm certainly going to go back and start looking at the chat comments and questions. And there's just a lot of explanation here to go through before we get started. So this is all much more in depth than what the early access showed. So if you're showing up here, coming in from early access, things are now much different and much more involved on how you're going to be setting up your character. So more choices, always a good thing. So we're going to click proceed here, and this is going to give us a chance to enter our name. And we will go ahead and do that. There is no longer an option to select profiles. That was eliminated in either patch 8 or patch 9. All of your save files are now based upon your character name, so you don't have to create different profiles to do it. Okay? And then your guardian, this is very similar to the choice that we had about who do you see in your dreams type of thing, except that is now entirely changed in the full version. And it allows you to pick whatever race, and again, all of those same type of selections for this type of character. Okay? So it kind of explains very quickly, and I'm not trying to go too far in depth on all the changes of character selection. There are a lot of guides that are out there for it, and there will be more published. But that kind of goes through what we're going to be playing and how we're going to be playing it. So yeah, going back through some of the chat. Yeah, we're like Eric. I completely agree. The Dragonborn look awesome from an RP perspective or a role playing perspective. Yeah, they're great. I kind of wish that race was still tied to those stat selections, but I certainly understand the Tasha's Cauldron implementation to be able to allow more people to choose whatever race and whatever stats they want. And in this case, the half-orc just makes a much better frontline fighter for it. So yeah, half-orc is... you haven't seen a lot of playthroughs. There aren't a whole lot of videos and that sort of stuff out there for it. But I'm very happy to focus on it here as well. It's something new for everyone as well. So yeah, Devotion Paladins are the good guys. Vengeance have a little bit more leeway in it, and the Oath of Ancients are more your nature druid crossover guys. So, can you make multiple characters? Will it overwrite your old saves? No, you could. Like I said a minute ago, the saves are based on your character name. So, as long as you name your characters different, then you can have multiple saves and multiple playthroughs. I've got 3 playthroughs going on simultaneously right now, and it's all simply based upon your name. So what's the penalty for oath breaking? We're probably going to run into that because the game has hard-coded certain things for breaking your oath. I don't want to give a lot of spoilers and go too depth into it, but you will lose your oath charges, you will lose some of your abilities, but you will also have the opportunity to embrace the Oathbreaker Paladin subclass and gain other abilities in place of that. So Sorry, just reading through some at Can Shrek get little horns. Yeah, like I showed you, there are all sorts of Tusk ability or Tusk options you can pick for it. So, but yeah, I am playing Shrek here. So, your guardian should be an annoying halfling bard. Halfling, that's actually one thing that we're probably going to explore a little bit when we get to hirelings. There is a Lightfoot halfling bard that you can pick as a hireling, and to be honest, there are probably portions of this game where we are going to remove one of the origin characters and put that bard hireling in their place just to test out some synergies once we get to multi-classing, but it's going to be a bit farther down the road. Half-orc barbarian, like I say, great damage dealers, especially if you don't have Tasha's. With the +2 to strength and +1 to constitution, they make perfect barbarians. You can get out of the Oathbreaker status, yes. I know what it was in early access. It was a heaping lot of gold to be able to pay to get out of your Oathbreaker status. I'm very interested to see if they've lowered that number in the full version or not, because it was an excessive amount of gold, and I get it. Breaking your oath is a big thing, so you want to have a big penalty for getting back into it. But with the game hard coding that selection, and you maybe running into that hard code and then accidentally breaking your oath in a way that the game thinks you broke it and then having to pay that to get back, was a little crazy. So I'm anxious to see. So yeah, hirelings, you're going to see that you can, in place of any of the origin characters, you can free up a spot in your party, and you can go to Withers and you can hire one of, I think there's 16, either 12 or 16 hirelings that are different selections of races and classes to take the place of one of your origin characters. There are no origin characters that are bards. So maybe if you want a bard in your party, you can bring a halfling, the halfling bard along hireling with you, and that gets you the bard abilities in your party, that sort of thing. So, all right, so I think we're just going to go ahead and venture forth, and this is going to go ahead and start our cutscene for the introduction to the prologue. Alright, well, the same cutscenes that you were used to in early access, but again, just like Eric just said, yes, the cutscenes are just amazing. That introduction to early access floored everybody who was playing it, and while my house is under construction, unfortunately I'm not playing on my 65-inch 4K TV, but I'm playing on a smaller one at 4K, and it's still amazing to see those things up close and personal like that. So, and yeah, Oda, that's pretty funny. Yeah, as often as Baldur's Gate has been attacked in the Forgotten Realms lore, you would think that they would have gotten some artisans to put up some ballista, or actually some of the more modern Forgotten Realms technology for air defenses. So, okay, so here we go. Brought back in where we're used to seeing the prologue start. So nothing looks drastically different here from where you start the prologue. You still have the nursery. The things that you see right off the bat, however, that are different is the mini-map. The mini-map has taken on much more detail and looks much more like a Dungeons & Dragons tabletop map. The full version, when you open it up and look at it, you can still see the outlines of where you're able to travel and where you're able to get to, but you have the grid pattern that is always there for movement speed on tabletop maps. So it looks much more like that, and it's much more from, in an RP type of perspective. I'm really happy with this type of change that they've made to it. So the one thing that I've always mentioned in the past at the start of my playthroughs is that if you've never played a Baldur's Gate game before, you need to rely on two things. First, your mini-map, and second is your camera. Moving your camera around 360 degrees to see what's behind you, and then panning and moving your camera around to see what's around you are must-have concepts in these games. The reason for that is that there's so much verticality in this game that you might not even notice that there are areas you can get to that you might not be able to see. For instance, right now, if you look at the mini-map behind us, there's another way we can walk up here, but if you don't turn your camera around behind you to look, you might never see it. Also, if you're looking at your camera view here, you might not see that this area is elevated. If you move your camera around, you can see there's an elevated walkway over here. If you don't move your camera around, you might not ever know it's there. So, one of the key things in these games is to make sure that you move your camera around as you're moving to be able to explore your environment and make sure that you don't miss anything. High ground is so important, but it's also a place for hiding stuff, just like you have up here. There's an onyx that we can pick up. There's a rune slate that we can read for some lore. Okay? So don't forget about your camera and moving it around. Don't just let your character movement determine where your camera is going to go. If I move, there's going to become a point where my camera is going to move with my character, but that's going to be staying right behind it all the time. You don't want to do that. The other thing is the Alt key. Holding Alt will highlight certain items that might be able to be interacted with or picked up that are around you. We're going to see more of that as we go, but we're just going to search the chest and we're just going to take all here. You can double click on it or you can just hit take all. And now we're going to move ourselves back around where we were. When we get here, we will just illustrate the jump function. If you hit the Z button, it activates jump, or you can just hit the jump key down here, and it will show you how far you can jump and where you can land. However, if you look at what's down by the cursor, it says if I jump down there from this height, I'm going to take damage, and I'm possibly going to fall prone. So you probably don't want to do that if you have an option to just move around and get somewhere easily. But sometimes you may have to jump off of a high place and take damage just to get yourself out of a sticky situation. So you can also see that over here, we have another way to go. You can see that the minimap had opened up all of this. Now we have another way that we can go. And and we're going to search this Mind Flayer while we're here. And again, a Peridot, and we're going to take all.
Dead. Good.
Now we have another elevated area up here, and there's another chest, and if you hold left alt, you can see it pops up.
What's in here?
So we have an arrow of acid and some gold. We can look around over here. The walkway ends. No way to go that way. In the early access, you might remember that you could jump up here, and then you could jump across over to here, and there was a body over here that you could search. That body is not there anymore. That body had one of the 3 mind jars on it, and that is no longer there. So there have been some changes in what you might have seen through other early access playthroughs. The nursery is still here, so our icon is changed to the gear icon, which means we can interact with it. So now we can click on it.
This is the pool that thing came from. The parasite now writhing behind your eye.
Our books in the game lore only do they give buffs to wizards and such. The books are mainly lore, however, there are special books that open up secret locations, that give you access to certain dialogue options when you're dealing with other people, and that sort of stuff. So if you haven't been through early access and you know which are the lore books and which are the specialty books, then just at least spend a couple of seconds reading every book that you pick up for a while until you realize which ones are the lore books and which ones aren't. So here we're going to have our first implementation of a skill check. You hover over it within these brackets, it's going to do an investigation check. You can look to the left and see that I'm getting a -1 to that roll from my intelligence. So when you click on it, you have a 1d20 it's going to roll. The DC, or difficulty class, is the number that you have to roll to pass the check. I'm getting a -1 from my intelligence because I'm a stupid guy. My intelligence is 8. So I have to roll an 11 to be able to equal or pass this DC. I rolled a 5. Going to subtract 1, so 4, so that's a failure. Okay, so nothing I can do but continue.
You notice nothing more than meets the eye.
So now I didn't get any additional options, so I can either reach toward the pool or I can leave. I will tell you what happens if you reach toward the pool explodes and you take damage. That damage is actually enough with certain lower level characters that you can actually kill your character. I don't want to do it here just because I don't want to have to waste the time to go through that if it does happen. So I'm just going to leave. But if you do take damage, and through this exploding, these restoration pods, you can walk up to it and it will fully restore all of your spells, all of your charges for Lay on Hands and Oath, as well as your hit points. So you can get those back. This is a tutorial, but yeah, that pod has actually killed my bard when I did a playthrough on it, just to illustrate it. So it's kind of crazy. So yes, and that's actually, yeah, the die. When you get into there, you can customize your dice, but yes, the digital deluxe edition, if you played early access, comes with that customizable set of die. So you can interact with these Mind Flayer pods.
Not everyone made it out alive.
Just gives you some dialogue options. Yeah, the fastest way to speed run the game is to die in the first room. And then you can, like I say, if you lost some hit points in this room, you can click the restoration pod. It will get your hit points all back, and as well as your spells and charges for everything. How tedious is inventory management? We're going to go through that actually here once we get farther through the through the prologue here, and you'll see an explanation of the inventory. So if you stick with us just a little bit longer while we get into some of these rooms where we can loot some more objects, you'll see. I'm going to open up the inventory and explain it. So here again, if we hold left alt, we can see that we have a goblin over here that we can loot.
What's inside?
Take all, and we can read an Illithid record.
Images of goblins, their habits and histories flash into your mind.
Here, if we hold left alt, none of these options are actually showing up in left alt. And this is the thing about alt. It's not an end-all be-all for item notifications. Okay, you still need to be able to look around, zoom in on items, and look and see if you can see things.
A schematic of a Nautiloid flashes into your mind. Nerves, sinews, as much living being as ship.
Oh, Crane, it depends on which cheese you're talking about. The Restoration Pause cheese does not work anymore. However, the original Boom cheese still does. You just have a lot less time to make it work. And you'll see that in the prologue when we get to that point.
History, elves, dwarves, humans, and more flash behind your
Okay,
eyes.
so we're just getting some lore out of these options, but we're also opening up the mini-map. We're exploring all of these little alcoves and that sort of stuff and making sure that there's nothing in them that's hidden from us or anything like that. Okay, now we get to this area, and you can see, we move over here, there is a pathway going out, but there's also another pathway here right in front of me that leads up and around. So again, very important to be able to watch your surroundings and see where you're going. Okay, so now we get into this upper area up here. We can move around. In early access, there used to be another chest up here. That chest is gone on that side. If you hold left alt, there's no other chests that are showing up that are within sight. And we've been hearing the dialogue from Murnath here since the beginning. Yes, orcs do have dark vision. So, for Murnath, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to interact with Murnath.
Yes, you've come to save us from this place. From this place you'll free us.
The exposed brain quivers in expectation.
Please. Before they return. They return.
Okay, so we saw our first example of a passive background check there. Throughout the game, as you're walking around or you're interacting with stuff, the game is going to do skill checks completely in the background that don't allow a roll from you. There's no choice. You just have to go through it. Sometimes you're going to fail those, sometimes you're going to pass those, but there are ways that you can help influence those passive checks if you know that they're going to happen before you go into that particular situation. And we're going to talk more about that as we go through the playthrough.
A newborn. Born new from this husk.
You realize you're talking to an Intellect Devourer, a minion of the Mind Flayers who abducted you.
So there was an Arcana check completely in the background there. We passed it, and that changed this dialogue from the narrator here to give us some more information about what's going on. That's very often what those passive checks do.
Remove us from this body. From this case. Free us. Please.
Okay, so now we get a set of choices here. And this is one of the things that you'll see throughout Baldur's Gate 3, is that you're going to have multiple choices to do different things. And you can look at those choices and find out which is the best based upon the dialogue. Some of the dialogue an investigation may have you do one thing, strength may have you do another thing, and they may be good or bad things. So you may want to pick your skill check based upon what the dialogue says. But you can also pick it based upon the bonuses that you get. So here, investigation, I'm going to get a -1 to that roll. Dexterity, I'm not going to get any bonuses to that roll, but if I use the strength option, I'm going to have a +3 bonus because of my strength ability score. So that's the way I'm going to go here. It brings me into a strength check. I need a DC of 10. I have a +3 to the roll, so I need a 7 or higher here. And that's how ability checks work throughout this game. So,
the brain lifts from the skull. But you notice an opportunity. You could cripple the strange creature, making it more subservient, should it prove a threat.
Okay, so now I have an option here. I can either mutilate the brain or I can spare the creature. So another opportunity to do something here, and it says you could make it more subservient should it prove a threat. I'm gonna avoid some spoilers here, but I'm going to just spare the creature here, and we'll watch the outcome.
Free. Our freedom is ours, friend.
The creature pauses, listening. Something behind your eyes seizes in recognition.
We must go to the Helm. At the Helm, we are needed. To the Helm we go. We are going to the Helm.
Okay, so now you get your first interaction here with your followers. If you look up there at the top, it's got a status effect of being a newborn for 3 more turns. But you can see now it's 2 turns. It's ticking down. Right now it's got 11 hit points. And you can watch it as that effect wears off. And there it's gone, and now you can see it's got 21 hit points. If you would have passed the dexterity check and mutilated the brain to make it more subservient, it wouldn't have 21 hit points. It would only have 15 hit points. It wouldn't change anything else about it. It would just have a fewer number of hit points. Now, in early access, it didn't matter because we were never able to see or encounter us again anywhere else in the playthrough. But I'm anxious to see if we encounter us sometime much farther down the line, and because we didn't make him subservient, he's now going to be angry or hostile toward us. Or possibly, if you make him subservient, maybe you could recruit him as a camp follower, and he'll show up in your camp or something. But if you didn't do it right here in the prologue, you're not able to do that. I'm very anxious to see how that choice there impacts what happens with this character. But followers show up as secondary over here, which means that wherever you move, they're going to follow with you. You can select them and move them independently away from you. But as soon as you select your character again, they are going to come back and get back into formation with you. Okay, they are followers. They are not independent party members. So now we're going to head out this way, and you're going to get ready for another change from the early access. And that's what's about to come up here next.
Abomination. This is your end.
Your head throbs and your skin tingles. Visions rush past. A dragon's wing, a silver sword, and a flash of your face seen through the strange woman's eyes.
Oh. My head. What is this? Skvar. You are no thrall. Vlaakith blesses me this day. Together, we might survive.
Okay, so one of the coolest introductions to one of your party members that you are going to see, that Neo from the Matrix fighting Morpheus move, was really cool. It was a brand new cutscene that they put in this. I was really impressed to see it. So
We carry mind flayer parasites. Unless we escape, unless we are cleansed, our bodies and minds will be tainted and twisted. Within days, we will be Gale, mind flayers. We can do nothing until we escape. That must be our priority. First, we exterminate the imps. Then we find the Helm and take control of the ship. As for that thing, it will remain tame as long as it believes we are thralls. It may be of use in the fight to come.
Okay, so this leads us into our first combat, and we're going to go through this here in just a second. So a couple of questions, except would a paladin spare the creature? That's a very good question, and that's one of those things that I talked about earlier when talking about the oaths. The oath of devotion, where you are just dedicated to destroying all evil anywhere you find it. Rescuing the Intellect Devourer and not killing it might actually break your oath. I don't think they would have had you break your oath in the prologue, but things like that become very, very important when you're thinking about it, because the Paladin oaths force you into a role-playing perspective. So yes, those are very important questions that you have to think about. Would my Paladin with this particular oath do this action? Not necessarily, do I want to do this because it's a video game? So, would Lae'zel react differently if you were a Gith? That's a very, very good question, and I'm not going to spoil that, but the answer is yes. Yeah, but I'm not going to spoil exactly what it is. So now we get into a couple of things. So first I'm going to open up the combat log, because there was a question previously about the Arcana check that I made while talking to the Intellect Devourer. And it was mentioned that because I do have a -1 to intelligence, it must have a low DC. Either it's got a low difficulty class, or I rolled very, very well. And I can go through the combat log and scroll back and see that the DC of that check was a 10, so it was exactly 50-50. But because I have a -1 intelligence modifier, it was actually 55% chance I was going to fail it. But I rolled a 15. So I rolled really well and was able to offset it. That's the thing about D&D. It doesn't matter how good you are at something or how bad you are at something, the dice can always help you out, or they can always hurt you. Okay? So, but the thing about this, I'm going to leave this open as we go through it, so we can kind of check back on skill checks and that sort of stuff that we do on these. So, but you can always go back and see if you failed a perception check what the DC was. And if you're not on a live stream like me, you can then go back and reload the game and see if you can up your chances to pass that skill check based upon what you know the DC to be. So, combat. I mentioned this during the build, something called initiative. Whenever you get into combat, everybody rolls a d20. You add in your dexterity modifier. Whoever rolls the highest goes first. Whoever rolls next highest goes second, and on down the list in order. Okay? So, in this case, all three of my characters rolled better than all three of the imps. Actually, I think it's hard-coded in this game. On the playthroughs that I've done, I've always rolled better than these imps. So I think it's hard-coded that they're going to make this fight a little bit easier since it's your first one. But since all three of my portraits are large size here, and I have these dashed outlines around them, that means that I don't have to go in order. Doesn't matter if I do us first or if I do Jorval first, because they're all able to act before the imps. So in Dungeons and Dragons, this would be, if I want us going first and I want Jorval to actually act first, this would be what is called holding your turn. As long as there's no enemy in between us, you can all act in whatever order you want. But if this imp had rolled up here, then us would have to go first, and then maybe Lae'zel and Jorval could interchange their actions. Okay? That's important for planning how you're going to do combat, because you may want to have a spellcaster a spell that makes it easier for the other two people who rolled in front of them to make their attacks. And you're going to see much more of that as we go on. But for now, this is fairly straightforward. You can also see that these two imps are melee based. This one's carrying a hand axe. This one's carrying what looks like a scimitar. This one's just got its claws. If you want to know more about them, you can right click and examine. And it will show you all of their stats to know how well they are able to resist your attacks. Their armor classes, their armor class, how high you have to roll to be able to hit them, as well as any resistances and any features that they have that you may want to exploit. But for here, I'm just going to send my imp over here and have him attack, or have my Intellect Devourer go over here and attack the imp, and you can see he's got a 90% chance to hit. His claws are going to do 4 to 10 damage. This has 6. So if you do the math on that, we're looking at a 66% chance to get a kill if I get a 90% hit. Okay. So now you can see in your combat log, you can go back and look. So I used claws. I hit it for 7 damage. The attack roll was 16. The imp's armor class was 7. So it add my proficiencies in, and I hit. The damage roll was a 5. It added the dexterity modifier for a total damage of 7, and that allowed us to kill it. Okay, so you can always see what's influencing your to hit roll and your damage roll here in the combat log. So now I no longer need anything to do, but I'm not going to end his turn yet. I may want him to move back over this way here in a second. So now I'm going to go to Lae'zel. Actually, I'm going to go with me. And I have some options here. So these are, if you examine them, they're fiends. That's the monster type. Now again, I have an ability here, which gives me advantage on attack rolls against fiends for 2 turns. So I'm going to go ahead and use my bonus action to cast this. And now I have advantage. You can see underneath my cursor, it says advantage. So I've got a 99% chance to make this hit. I also have these other actions here, which are available to me because of my weapon choice. But for now, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to... I've got a really good chance. Again, my weapon damage is 4 to 11, so I have about a 70% chance to kill it if I hit it.
I'll strike you down.
Okay, so here you can see that I used a main hand attack. The imp's armor class was 7. I rolled 15 for a total of 20, so I hit it, but my damage roll was a 1. So I added in my strength bonus, which is 3, and that's how it came to the total damage of 4. So I rolled the lowest possible number on my damage, and that's why it didn't kill it. Like I say, the dice can benefit you, but they can also hamstring you, even though the percentages may be on your side. So now I'm going to use Lae'zel to follow up and also make an attack against this imp. But I want to try something here and see how far I can jump. So I could move out to here. I wouldn't be able to reach that imp. It's too far away. So I'm just going to have Lae'zel move up and make an attack on this imp as well. Okay, so she killed it. It's a lethal blow. And now I still have some movement left. So I still have half of Jorval's movement here. So I'm going to move him up. And then I'm going to have us move up as well to get in position for the next set of attacks. And now I can end everybody's turns. And the imp is going to get a chance to attack. Okay, so now us is able to go, but I don't need to use him. I'm going to use Jorval again, and I still have Divine Sense. It was available. It's active for 2 turns. You can see it down here. So 1 turn remaining. So it's still a 99% chance to hit. However, I also have another bonus action here where I can use Inquisitor's Might. So I can basically add 2 damage and possibly daze the target on my attack here. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. And now I'm going to go up and plunk it in the face. And you can see the gold number. That's the additional from Dazed. So now if I look at it, you can see my damage roll was a 6. Added my strength. Got a 9. It added the 2 radiant damage from Inquisitor's Might. You can see it down there at the bottom. And that's how it calculated the damage to be able to kill it. Alright. So, having the combat log to be able to refer to, looking at your different abilities and seeing what you have available and how they're going to impact your combat chances is what this game's all about. Right? So, what difficulty am I playing? All of my public live-throughs are going to be played on balanced. My personal playthroughs on Tactician, but all of my public playthroughs are on balanced. I don't want to, since I'm never saving and restarting, I don't save scum in my public playthroughs. I don't want it to be incredibly difficult. Do shields lower the checks to get hit? Shields increase your armor class. If you look down there below, it says I've got a 14 from the armor I'm wearing, 14 armor class, and a 2 from my shield. It's a +2 to the armor class. So shields increase your armor class. The armor class is the number on the D20 that you have to roll to be able to hit me. So the higher your armor class, the less chance somebody has to hit you, unless they have something like a weapon or a spell that bypasses armor class entirely. Those things are fairly rare, but there are spells and items that do that. So, but yes, it does make it harder to hit you in melee situations. Yes. And also and also with some certain spell choices as well that are based on a 2-hit roll. So the Void Bulb I definitely want. So I don't need the skull for anything, but I might as well pick it up. I can sell it later. And the Imp, here I'm going to take the hand axe. And I can go out here and I can search this dead thrall. There's a healing potion, always useful. I can go back up here into this area, open up the mini-map a little bit, hold Alt, and see there's another dead thrall over here. You might not have seen it, you might have missed it, but Alt outlines a lot of those things that you're able to search. So now I can search this thrall, pick up some gold, can walk around the corner and there's a restoration pod. So you can see I've taken some hit point damage. I also used my channel Oath charge. And I also used my Divine Sense, which you can see at the bottom there, is only available once every short rest. So here if I click the restoration pod, it brings back Divine Sense, it brings back my Oath charges, which are both on short rests, and if I had spells now, it would refresh my spells as if it was a long rest. So these act as both a short rest and a long rest without having to go to camp or anything like that. So there's another thrall here I can search.
We'll be able to take another dragon attack.
I'm just going to take all. There's another thrall here I can search. Take all, and now I can climb the mesh. You can see my icon turns to a gear, so you can interact with it. And you climb up here to the top. You get an autosave from the game. You can turn around and look behind you. There's this area over here, but there's nothing back there. So if you wanted to try and jump across there, you could. However, it says it's too far to get over there. But if you had a spell that like Misty Step that would get you over there, there's still nothing over there to explore. So, but again, be prepared to look behind you. As soon as you climb up, you saw my camera was pointing this way. Always look behind you and see if there are other ways to go. Okay, so we're going to go up here to this door. And we can walk into this room. This room's going to be very familiar from early access. We've seen this room before. So we can interact with these sigils here.
Unleash.
Okay, I passed an Arcana check. It's a 15 DC. I rolled a 17 though. So I got very, very lucky. That was an 80% chance I was going to fail, and I passed. And I did it again. And I failed that one. So I rolled a 1. So yeah, I was going to make up for it. I rolled a 17 and an 18, so yeah, it was going to give me a 1. Just to, the RNG was going to make up for it. So now we can see that these, if I click this button, it's going to unleash. If I push this button, it's going to make them aggressive. And if I push this button, it's going to do something that I don't know about. Okay. We have something going thump over here. So let's go over this way and we can look at it.
You! Get me out of this taxi! We have no time for stragglers.
The construction is too alien. Nothing looks familiar.
This ship is crashing. Do you intend to die for a stranger?
Try that contraption next to the pod. They did something to it when they sealed me in. Hurry! Please!
Okay. So it updates your journal with a quest. You can hit the J key to open up your journal. And it says it gives you a new quest. And you can read about all of your active as well as completed quests in your quest journal. Okay. So just remember that it's here. If you ever forget what you're supposed to be doing or where you're supposed to be going, you can always refer to your journal to see what's up next. So she wanted us to go to this terminal here.
The console appears dormant. The mechanisms are completely unrecognizable at first, but then you spy an empty socket.
I'm a half-orc paladin who's pretty stupid, so yeah, I'm just going to hit it.
Nothing. The console remains dormant.
I love that interaction. You just kick it. Yeah, that kicking makes everything work, right? Okay, so nothing we can do here.
Whatever fits in
That's a good question, Oda, and again, all things to be thinking about as you're going through your playthrough. Okay, so we do have a chest over here. You can see that the icon turned into a little padlock icon. So I'm not going to be able to open it. There's also the dark mine. This is one of the 3 mines that we saw in early access, so we can go pick it up. You can see there's a burnished necklace, and see, this is what I mean about holding Alt. You probably can't see the burnished necklace sitting on the table here. If you zoom in, you can see it's right there. But even with zoomed in, it's hard to see it. So this is why holding Alt is going to be very helpful, because now you don't even have to click on it. You can just hover over the name, and you can pick it up by clicking on it there. Right? So left Alt is very important in your playthroughs.
A brain, a Githyanki warrior.
So now we're going to go through this door.
Centuries of darkness.
And we're all familiar with this room as well. So we can search this dead thrall here. Right off the bat, we get a key. The key is outlined in orange. We'll explain what that means here in a minute. And now there's another Mind Flayer pod here.
Infected.
Dazed woman is trapped inside the pod. She doesn't notice you.
Okay, so we don't know what's happening here. But you can go sit in these chairs if you want. You can click on the chair. You can sit in it. Not to give away spoilers, but there are times that you want to have your characters sit in chairs. I'm just saying. This isn't one of those times, but there are times that you want that to happen. So there's another sigil here. And I failed my Arcana check. These checks are individual person based, so I'm going to have Lae'zel try it. And she failed as well. So we don't know what that button does. Okay. We can come over to the top. We can loot this chest. More healing potions. Always good. And the slave mind is up here. This is the 3rd of the mines that you would pick up in the early access. The one that's missing is our mind. And I can't find it in early access. Or, I mean, in the full version here in the prologue. Maybe it's just missing Maybe it was removed because it didn't. None of these mines serve a purpose, but either way, they're unique items, so I'm picking them up and saving them just to be on the safe side. So here's a rune. We were told earlier that that contraption out there needs a rune to work. So I'm just going to pick up all of this.
What's next to the pod?
And now we opened up a new section of our quest log. We found an Eldritch rune. It might help us to rescue the half-elf. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and push this button, just so you can see what it does.
As you place your hand on the pod, you hear something. A presence connected to the pod, commanding the person inside to change.
Changed at the pull of a lever. How? If we are not purified, this may be our fate.
Okay, now during early access, there was another cheese that you could do. By this point, you would have picked up a caustic bulb, and you could throw the caustic bulb down here and wait a few minutes while it caused damage over time to kill the illithid inside the pod. They've taken that out because there are no caustic bulbs up to this point in the game. So you don't have an option to get the XP from killing it. So one more change from it. How does Lae'zel not know how Mind Flayer ship works? One thing that's not made readily apparent to you is that this is what's called a Nautiloid. Nautiloids have not been around in the Forgotten Realms universe for centuries. They were very, very useful during the Githyanki Illithid War, but that war was a long time ago, well before Lae'zel was born. So her not knowing, or current Githyanki not knowing about all the ins and outs of a Nautiloid is very, very possible. Okay, so here we get some gold and an onyx, and it says that you use the gold key to open that. That's the key that we just found. And now we're going to go over here and we're going to interact with this pod again.
The console appears dormant. The console hums to life. But what is its purpose? Will it free the captive or transform her like that other unfortunate?
Okay, so you don't know what this is going to do, so you can make an Arcana check. And again, I've got a -1. Oh, and for those who asked the question earlier, you can click on the customized dice icon down here to pick the regular steel colored dice or these fire dice that I have here.
The pulsing glow
If you have the digital
organic
deluxe
lines
edition.
of the device make it seem more like a beating heart than a machine. This device is different from the one that caused the other captive to transform. Perhaps it will open the nearby pod.
Okay, and that Arcana check basically lets you know.
Squirming in your head. The parasite. Then discomfort fades, and another sensation washes over you. Connection. Authority.
Okay, so here you get your first introduction to the tadpole skill checks. There's been a lot of discussion about these, and I'm not going to go too in depth to it, but if it's got illithid in the front, this means that the tadpole that you have in your head is going to help you pass this wisdom check. Okay? So if I click on it, you can see there's a DC of 2. These used to be DC 0s, but yet a natural 1 would still fail it. Hardcore D&D people were really upset about that fact. So now they've modified things a little bit so that you're not going to get the DC zeros, meaning that you should be a guaranteed check. This is just going to try and make it a low number that helps you out. Okay, but you can still fail this.
You feel the biomechanical brain of the console process your command and yield to it. A shiver runs across your mind. You feel sated.
Okay, so now we can go up and we can talk to Shadowheart here.
I thought that damn thing was going to be my coffin. Thank you.
Your mind lurches into her thoughts. Her gratitude is mixed with wariness, because you have a Gith with you.
You keep dangerous company. Fair point. Looks like there's plenty of fighting ahead. Let me come with you. We can get off this ship and watch each other's backs along the way. Shadowheart. One moment.
Okay, so Shadowheart, just like all of your Origin companions, have their own secrets that they like to keep. The more you press them on those secrets, the more they're going to dislike you, because you're trying to get them to divulge information they don't want to give. So this is going to play into the approval concept or mechanism in the game. So that thing that she picked up in the cutscene, I don't want to ask her about it. She's going to be very private and very elusive about it, and if you press her, it's just going to lead to disapproval.
Finally. Let us make for the Helm. We've wasted enough time already.
She's right. Lead on.
Okay, so now I'm going to illustrate one of the core concepts of Baldur's Gate 3 when it comes to combat, and that is pre-positioning your characters to deal with a combat that you know is going to be coming. So the first thing you can do is these two buttons here. These will toggle the group, which means right now if I move one of my characters, the other Origin characters stay where they stay put. They don't move. If you group them back up, then they will rejoin you. Okay, so splitting your group allows you to move your individual Origin characters wherever you want, and they won't follow you in wherever you're going. Okay, now you can't do that with your follower. Your follower's always going to be with you, but they're always going to be trailing behind you a little bit. So, but the second thing you can do is put them into hiding as a group here. And now it's just toggle hide because you're not in a group. It's not toggle group hide. It's just toggle hide. So you can hide your characters.
Can't risk being in open view.
And keep them hidden from view. So right now, I know what's going to happen. I have two cultists here. As soon as I hit the aggression button, they're going to wake up and they're going to be angry at me. If all of my characters were grouped up over here, then I would have to run one of my characters all the way over here to attack this cultist, and I might not be able to do it. I might not be able to get there and make an attack on him before he attacked me. So if I want to avoid that possibility, I can pre-position one of my characters in a spot that's going to be near him, and if I roll better on initiative, then I don't have to move to attack him. All I have to do is attack him. So pre-positioning your characters or positioning characters in certain locations to take advantage of impending combat is going to be very, very helpful for you. If you don't care about any of that, you can always just walk up to it, click it, and hack it with your sword or whatever. You're still going to be playing the game. Okay? You might not be maximizing your opportunities, and it may make some of the harder combat scenarios mean that you have to reload a couple of times. But you can still play it without knowing any of this. However, I'm trying to maximize your enjoyment of the game. If you have to reload this encounter 3 times because you just try and walk up and hit something and it's not working, maybe there's other ways to do it. So that's what I'm going to be explaining throughout this playthrough. So now I'm going to hit this button here. Okay, and you can see that we rolled initiative again. The machine turned them hostile. And now you can see that we rolled in front of all of them. So now my character who's here, if I click on me and I see how far I have to move, you can see the line turns red. So you see, I wouldn't even be able to get close enough to this cultist to hit him if I was standing way back here. So this is, now Lae'zel can just, she's standing right there, she can just hit him. The other thing is that you can see that if I move that line too close to this cultist here, see if I move the line out here, if I get too close, you can see that red sword icon popping up. That means if I walk by them, if I get here, I'm going to be within melee range of this cultist. And if I try and leave, try and walk too far away from them, once I've gotten close, they're going to be able to attack me in the back. That's called an attack of opportunity. If you have a bonus action available to you, you're able to execute an attack of opportunity whenever somebody comes in within range of you and then tries to walk out of range. And you can see that here listed above your characters if you have that reaction available to you. If you don't have that opportunity attack reaction, you won't see it there. Okay, so very important things to know about the iconography here, about what that's trying to tell you. It's trying to tell you that you're going to get hit if you walk to that location. It's also telling you that you're going to take a hit and you can't even reach this guy because you don't have enough movement. Okay? So again, just like last time, all 4 of my characters rolled before them, so I can go in any order that I want. So I'm going to start with us, and I'm just going to attack this sacrifice cultist. And I did a 1-hit kill there. Alright? So now I'm going to go to Lae'zel and have her attack this cultist. 1-hit kill there. All good. Okay. Don't expect all combat to be this easy. They're making it quite easy on you in the prologue for a reason. They don't want you getting so frustrated that you quit the game inside the first room. So...
light on my feet.
So now that we've done that, I don't think I used anything, but I'll just go over here and click on the restoration pod just to be on the safe side. We're going to make our way into this next room. And we're going to get a quick cutscene.
We are nearing the Helm. Once inside, do as I say.
Okay, now I'm going to try and illustrate my dislike of the pathing in this game. As you can see, your characters try and keep this diamond formation around you. Okay? In early access, they would see bad things on the ground and they would try and navigate around them, but they were not good at it at all. Okay, so if I take my Paladin and I move them up here, if I hide, you can see the path it's going to take. You see it's going to go out a little bit wide because this is a fire surface and you can see the line turns red. That means if I walk into that fire surface, I'm going to take fire damage. Okay, so if I click up here, it's going to want to go to the right and avoid that. However, in an effort to stay in formation, some of your characters may walk out wide to the left of you and walk through that fire. It happened to me on my very first playthrough in the full version here, and I'm going to try it and just see what happens.
Feet can carry me.
Okay, so everybody avoided it that time. If somebody does walk through the fire here, if somebody, and see that, you see she moved out to the side? So if you do get somebody that walks through the fire, just take a detour, go to the restoration pod, get those hit points back, and then try and walk through here again. All right? It will happen. It does happen. It's annoying. Trust me. Okay, so before we go in here, we need to look at a couple of things. The first is our inventory. Okay? This is different than in the full version or in the early access. In early access, you could see everybody's inventories, but you could not transfer items between the inventories. Actually, I don't think you could see the inventories in early access. It was just your inventory. So there was no way to transfer items to anybody else. That is not the case here. You can move items because of carry weight limitations or whatever onto other characters to carry for you, and then when you recruit them into your party again later on, once you land on the beach, they will still have those items with them. Okay, that's important to realize, because now I don't have a ranged weapon here. I would like to have a ranged weapon. Shadowheart doesn't have a ranged weapon. I would like for her to have a ranged weapon as well. So I want to make sure that she's proficient with it. She is. And I want to make sure that I'm proficient with it, and I know I am. So now everybody's got a ranged weapon, just in case they can't get close enough to something to make an attack. Okay, the other thing that you want to do while you're here is make sure that you have the correct spells brought up or prepared that you want to for this fight. The only spellcaster we have right now is Shadowheart. These are the spells that she has available to her to cast, and she's only got 2 of them that she can cast. Okay, so if you go to the spell book, clerics are able to, actually any of our characters are able to prepare spells anytime they want, as long as they're not in combat. So here I can keep Guiding Bolt, I can remove Inflict Wounds if I would like. I could remove Shield of Faith or Healing Word. I'm going to remove Inflict Wounds here. Now there was a comment earlier that Dracula made about using the command spell. The command spell, you can command a creature to flee, move closer, freeze, drop to the ground, or drop its weapon. That is very true. If you get the command spell to land on Commander Zhalk in here, he will drop the Everburn Blade and he will not pick it back up. However, I'm going to take command, just so you can see it. The chances of that spell landing are very, very low unless you get some very specific circumstances to happen prior to that. So I'm going to take it, but we can't count on this working. The next thing that you want to look at is the changes quickly to your inventory. This question was asked earlier. Does your inventory stay more organized than previous? And the answer is yes, it does. And you can see with these orange outlined items. Okay. These are a camp supply pack, an alchemy pouch, which I'm not going to talk about now, and a keychain. All of your camp supplies that you pick up or that you have will automatically go into this camp supply pack, so they're not cluttering up your inventory out here. That's great. All of the keys that you pick up automatically go into this inventory here, so you don't have a whole bunch of keys sitting out here. That's even better. The one thing that they don't do is reduce your carry weight. Meaning that if you pick up a bunch of camp supplies, they're all going to go into this camp supply pack. But all those camp supplies are still going to be taking up carry weight. So in all my past live streams, when I would click on a camp supply and I would right click and I would send it to camp. You don't have access to your camp here in the prologue, but you would send it to camp. You still want to do that. Just because you don't need it taking up carry weight. It's great for keeping your inventory organized, but that's all it does. It doesn't serve any purpose other than that. Okay? Your alchemy pouch and your keychain work the same way. They have carry weight associated with them. However, keys have very, very little weight. That's 1/100th of a pound. Alchemy ingredients, when we have them, are going to be for the most part the same way. So you don't have to worry about keeping these as cleaned out, but you definitely want to keep your camp supply sack cleaned out. If you get a bunch in here, you can highlight them and send them all to camp at once. Okay? The other thing that we want to do before we go in here is make sure that we have our weapons equipped that we want to. So, Shadowheart's got a mace and a shield. I have a Warhammer, which is 1d10 and a shield. And those are the highest damage weapons that I'm going to have available to me right now, so that's the way I want to go. The other thing that I want to do is make sure that my healing potions are balanced out. So I'm going to split this. And I'm going to split these. And now I can put one here and one here. And now everybody has 3 healing potions. Okay? So that way everybody has an equal opportunity to get heals if they need them, without having to rely on somebody else to heal them. Alright? So, why we're doing so much prep for this is because inside of this room, you're going to see a cutscene when we walk in. Alright? And this is a little less hectic than it used to be, because as soon as you walk in, the cutscene starts. Okay, so initiative got rolled. It wasn't nearly as kind as we've seen in the past, though. Commander Zhalk rolled first. So he got off an attack against the Mind Flayer to start off the round. Okay. Lae'zel and Shadowheart are here, but I rolled last. So these 3 enemies are going to be able to attack before me. This encounter now, if you're trying to kill Commander Zhalk, is a lot more RNG based than it used to be. You can also see we have a countdown timer that has started. This was not in early access. Now you have 15 turns before this thing will automatically end. Okay. The reason everybody talks about Commander Zhalk is because if you zoom in, you can see he's got a blade that's on fire. This is called the Everburn Blade, and in early access it was the best constant damage item that you could get in early access. It is still that way for a large portion of Act 1. Okay? If you examine Commander Zhalk, you can see he's got a lot of hit points, he's got a really high armor class, and he's got a lot of very high stats. His wisdom is a +1 to his wisdom checks, but his strength, he's doing +5 to hit and +5 to damage. His dexterity is also +4, which is upping his armor class by 2 because he's wearing medium armor right now. He's also resistant to all types of melee damage, as well as ranged damage. And he's also resistant to the 4 common elements. So he's only going to take half damage from all of these things. Now there are certain damage types that are not mentioned here, like radiant damage or force damage. If you're able to cause those, you're going to do full damage. But he's resistant to a bunch of other things. So killing him is meant to be very hard. The devs have intentionally programmed this to make it very hard to be able to kill him and loot his weapon. In early access, there were multiple ways to get it that were relatively easy. Here, not so much. It's a lot harder to do it, and it is very much RNG based upon how many times the Mind Flayer stuns Commander Zhalk. Has my mic been off that entire time? Tell me in the comments if my mic was off for an extended period of time there. Have you been hearing me talk or not? Okay, I hope you've been hearing me talk. through all this explanation. I thought that my mic was off there. So the devs have made this fight a lot harder. So the mic's been on throughout all my explanations? Okay. So they've made it a lot harder, and it's much more RNG based. Oh, it was not off. Okay, good. Good. So I'm gonna move up. I'm gonna take out the imps as quickly as I can, and I'm gonna advance toward this fight as fast as I can get there. Okay, that's the goal here, is to get there as fast as I can. So I'm gonna move us up here and try and take out this imp. I wasn't able to do it, so that ends his turn, and now the Mind Flayer is gonna go. Okay, so we stunned Commander Zhalk. Did big damage. Commander Zhalk is stunned, so on his next turn, he's not going to be able to make an attack, which saves the Mind Flayer from getting hit, but also while he's stunned, he can't move or take actions, bonus actions, or reactions, which means you can move around him. He's also now vulnerable to attacks. So I don't think he's within range. He's not, to be able to illustrate it. But yeah, he's got 30% defense against it, and that's with disadvantage because he's outside of normal range. When he's stunned, he's much easier to hit. So if you can get more stuns from the Mind Flayer, that means he's much easier to hit, much easier for the rest of your party to cause damage. Okay? So now I'm going to move Shadowheart out here, and I'm going to... Yeah, I'm just going to move her so she does not provoke any attacks of opportunity. I'm going to have her turn around and make a ranged attack against this imp. And now she's probably close enough that I can cast Shield of Faith on the Mind Flayer. Okay, now hopefully this imp does not shoot Shadowheart and break her concentration, but we will see. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Now Lae'zel does have enough movement to get up here next to her, so I'm just going to move her up and make an attack. Alright, and she was able to get the kill. So I don't want anything else from their bonus actions done yet. I want to save spells and other types of actions for now.
Can't give up. Not now.
Shoot Shadowheart? Okay, good. So now my half-orc can move, and he has an unrestricted path to get up there. So in doing this, he's not going to be able to attack anything except with a ranged attack anyway. So I'm just going to have him get into position as quickly as I can, and I'm going to have him do that with a dash. Then I'm going to have him jump as far as he can without moving. That uses 3 meters of movement speed, but he actually jumped like 8 meters. And then I'm going to have him move all the way up here next to Commander Zhalk. And I'm actually going to have him move up as far as he possibly can. So he is now in a position to attack Commander Zhalk next turn. Okay? That illustrates having a high-strength character, being able to jump a long distance, and then move because of dash, how you can traverse long distances using an action and a bonus action. Now Commander Zhalk's turn is going to come up. He's stunned, so he can't do anything. So now it's my turn. And what I want to do is I'm not going to be able to make a melee attack with us here. So I'm going to have us dash as well. Us does not have a whole lot of strength, but he can move more than 3 meters. Now I'm going to have him move right up next to this imp. If this imp tries to move, he's going to provoke an attack of opportunity because it is available. Okay, so the Mind Flayer is doing some big damage, which is what we want to see, but now Commander Zhalk is no longer stunned. Okay, so now for Lae'zel, I'm going to have her move up here, and I want to have her try and move up to the other side of Commander Zhalk. So I'm going to have her dash. Then I'm going to have her jump as far as she can. And now I'm going to have her move up here. And I'm going to have her keep her distance from the Mind Flayer. You want to have some separation between your characters and the Mind Flayer. Okay? You do not want to be in melee range. You can see that circle. You do not want to be in melee range of the Mind Flayer. The reason for that is if we do manage to kill Commander Zhalk, the Mind Flayer is going to turn hostile. And the Mind Flayer may go after us, it may go after some other enemies, but either way, we want to be able to move away from the Mind Flayer without provoking an attack of opportunity. So you want to have some separation between your characters and the Mind Flayer. Alright? So now for Lae'zel, her turn can end. Now for Shadowheart, I'm going to have Shadowheart move up here.
Got to move.
And there are a couple of options now that we can pursue. The first is we could try and cast some spells on Commander Zhalk. So if we do Guiding Bolt, which is the highest damage spell I have, it's got a 40% chance to hit. Okay, not great. And that's because it's an attack roll. You can see down there at the bottom, it's based on an attack roll, which means I have to overcome his armor class with my spell DC. Right now, there's only a 40% chance of that happening. However, if he gets stunned again, there's a much higher chance of Guiding Bolt landing. So instead of wasting Guiding Bolt right now, I might want to cast it once he's stunned. Okay? So I'm going to hold off on using my only other spell for now, because if he's stunned, then he becomes much more susceptible to attacks. Lae'zel might be able to use her bonus action to land a Daze Pommel Strike. And if he's dazed, then as we learned previously with Daze, he has disadvantage on his Wisdom saving throws. And then the command spell might make him drop his weapon because it's going to be much easier to make it land. Okay? I've only got one spell left. I'm going to make it count, and I'm going to just try and cause normal damage against Commander Zhalk until I get to a point where I can hopefully take advantage of the stuns from the Mind Flayer. So in this case, I do want to get rid of this imp, so I am just going to try and get rid of it here as quickly as I can. So that managed to kill it. That's great. That's exactly what I needed to have happen.
Time to push my
So now for my turn. What can I do? Again, previously I've talked about all these abilities that we have. The Commander Zhalk here is a fiend. So if I activate Divine Sense for 2 turns, I'm going to have advantage on attack rolls against him. Right? However, it only lasts for 2 turns. So what I probably want to do is once he's stunned, use this to gain advantage for 2 turns. Use one of those turns, or use one of those turns when he's, when I have an easier chance to hit, to try and daze him using Inquisitor's Might. And then use Divine Sense after that, after it's already done, because Daze gives me an opportunity to again open up the higher chance of the command spell landing. So for now, I'm just going to try my regular attacks against Commander Zhalk, and we'll see how it goes. So for right now, if I just try a main hand attack, you can see there's only a 40% chance of it hitting. But I also have some other attacks here. I have a Weakening Strike, which is going to inflict Weak Grip. Weak Grip means that he has disadvantage on his attack rolls and strength saving throws. There's also the opportunity for Concussive Smash, which can possibly daze our target, which is great. Or Backbreaker, which might knock him prone. When he's prone on the ground, my attacks are criticals. Okay, so they're a lot easier to hit when he's prone on the ground. So these 3 are what I'm going to try and use. You can see any of them that I pick, they're all that same 40%. So I might as well try and use them to cause other types of damage. So here, I'm going to try a concussive smash first. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to try backbreaker first. And it missed. So no effects get happen, nothing happened. So end my turn. Okay, so now I have us, and with us, I'm going to move us up into a position farther up here, and I'm going to dash to do that. And there's a reason for that. Now the Mind Flayer gets to go. Okay, he did big damage, but he didn't stun him.
We must take the transponder.
So now for me, I'm going to do the same type of things again. I'm going to just try and do normal damage against him using my regular attacks. Okay, so nothing there.
I'm ready.
Shadowheart. I'm going to have Shadowheart dash, move out here around everybody, and I'm going to have her move up here.
Hurry before they strike.
That cutscene triggers a new set of reinforcements that are up here. Okay, and I want to make sure that they're dead so that I have a clear path to where I'm trying to go, which is up here at the transponder. Okay, so now that we're here, I'm just going to keep myself back a little bit and not advance too far. That's why I moved us up here so that it can take some of the combat damage and try and get some kills up here.
Nothing will stand in my way.
So now for me, again, with only a 40% chance to hit, I'm just going to try and get normal damage here. But I have some options here, so let's try a Weakening Strike. Okay, that missed. Okay, so now for me, I'm going to try and kill this imp here. This imp is got a hand axe. Alright, now I'm going to move myself way up here in between these two, so if either one of them move, they're going to take an attack of opportunity. Okay, so the Mind Flayer attacked and it missed.
No time left.
So me with a regular attack. I missed.
Concentrate.
Shadowheart can now move up a little bit farther until she gets within range. And try and do some regular attacks of her own. And now me, again with a regular attack. And I missed. Okay, you can see the difference in hit points between the two. The Mind Flayer is taking a lot of damage here. So now for us, I'm going to go after the Hellsboar. And end my turn. Okay, so the Mind Flayer did damage, but he didn't stun him. So we're getting fairly unlucky with the stuns here. Okay, so we did manage to cause some damage there with a regular attack.
Let's end this.
Shadowheart is going to try and take out the imp, which is next to attack. I could shoot the Hellsboar, but the Hellsboar's already had his turn, so I'm going to focus on taking out one that hasn't had an attack yet. Alright, now I can end her turn.
Keep going.
And for me, I'm going to try Concussive Smash. Alright, and I missed. Oh good, the Mind Flayer, or the Commander Zhalk missed. And now you can see two other things that have popped up on the screen. Commander Zhalk has reinforcements. They're going to be coming in very, very fast, and I don't think we have been able to cause enough damage to Commander Zhalk for this to work. Alright, so we're going to start moving us back here. I should have jumped, and I didn't. Okay, so he saved against the Mind Blast. If he would have stunned him there, we might have had a chance. But here, we probably do not have a chance. So now it's time, since reinforcements are coming, it's time to pull out all the stops and hope that we get lucky. So I'm going to try a pommel strike first. I hit, but he's saved against being dazed. So now I'm going to try and lacerate. And that missed. So now it's time to pull out all the stops that we have. We can't rely on command anymore. We just need to try and cause as much damage as we possibly can. So now I'm going to switch to Guiding Bolt with only a 40% chance to hit and see if it'll hit or not. Okay, it did for 14 points of damage, which is great. But it certainly still leaves him with 53 hit points. It's probably way too much.
Survival is all that matters.
For me, now it's time to start breaking out all of the other things here. So we're going to have advantage on our attack roll for 2 turns. So we're going to do that first. All right, so now we're at a 64% chance to hit. And we still missed. And here come his reinforcements. Now the Cambions can dash, but they can also fly. So it's going to take them 3 turns to get within combat range. The first one, they're going to dash to get there. The second one, they're also going to dash. And the third one, they're going to fly, and they're going to land right next to me. All right. So we need to start thinking about our character positioning now as well. So I'm going to have us jump. Then I'm going to have him move as far down here as he can. He's not going to be able to. So I'm just going to dash and get him right in here. For when the Cambions show up, I want them to try and go after us or the Mind Flayer and not my characters. So we missed on damage again. We are definitely not going to be able to make this work. So I'm going to move around back a little bit more. Okay, and then I'm going to move.
My faith will protect me.
I'm going to hold Shadowheart's turn, and I'm going to use my charge of Lay on Hands here on the Mind Flayer. Okay, now I'm going to move back around the back side of the Mind Flayer. And I'm going to cast Inquisitor's Might on myself and get ready for the next turn. Now for Shadowheart, I'm going to have Shadowheart move up here toward the transponder a little bit, but stay within range of Commander Zhalk.
Got to press on.
I'm still within range. I'm still within range. Okay, so I've got a 30% chance to hit here with my ranged weapon. Firebolt's at 25. Sacred Flame is at 40. So I'll try that. That hit for 4 points. And we'll end her turn. These 2 Cambions are going to dash. And on their next turn, they're going to fly. And they're going to land right next to my characters. For here, it doesn't really matter what Us does. He's just here to absorb and tank some damage. Okay, so we still got 25 hit points left.
Let's finish this.
I won't give in.
And for myself, I have Inquisitor's Might active. So now if I hit, I'm going to do an additional 2 points of radiant damage, but I've only got a 40% chance to hit. Okay, so I did hit for 4 points of damage. He's down to 13 hit points. This is going to be so close. It entirely depends upon what happens with the Mind Flayer's next turn here. So here you're going to see the Cambions, and they're going to fly, and they're going to land right next to us. He went after us. That's great. He's going to go after the Mind Flayer. That's great. Again, didn't come after me, and the Mind Flayer survived with 2 hit points. So now, we have to hope. We have to hope. Oh, us came in clutch with, so he's only got 9 hit points left. We have to hope that the Mind Flayer gets a hit. If he gets a hit, we're going to get the Everburn Blade. If he doesn't get a hit, we are probably not going to get the Everburn Blade. So, here we go. Perfect. Okay, so, wow, I did not think that was going to happen. Okay, so now it's my turn. All 3 of my characters can go. And now this is why I left some distance and I moved to the opposite side. Moving to the opposite side of Commander Zhalk meant that the 2 Cambions were going to fly toward the 2 nearest characters and not my characters. But now I can loot Commander Zhalk with either of my characters. So I'm going to loot it with my Paladin. There's the Everburn Blade. We're going to take all. And now all I have to do is get out of here. The way that I can do that, your main character does not have to be the one that interacts with the transponder. Any character can do it. So I'm going to dash with Shadowheart and click the transponder.
The Helm's alien transponder. You've made it in time.
Yes, Oda, fly does trigger attacks of opportunity. If you're next to somebody trying to fly away from them.
As you wake, the tadpole squirms in your skull. The chaos of the crash site confuses the landscape. You'll need to find a settlement or landmark, and you'll need to do it quickly. The tadpole is a death sentence, and the clock is ticking. You need a cure.
Okay. I'm going to take a break for just a second. Sorry for the typos in my response there, Oda. I didn't want to interrupt too much of the cutscene. A lot of you know, as I've explained before, I'm a little older. I've been playing video games for 40 years. The reason there are so many typos in that sentence is because even now my hands are still shaking a little bit. And this is what I love about video games in general, and what I love about Dungeons and Dragons in particular, is the intensity which you find yourselves in while you're playing an encounter. If you have never played tabletop and you get that in-person sensation of relying on the other people sitting around a table with you, you're getting a good idea of what it's like in a game like this, where things can turn very quickly and it's very tense situations. And even in a video game, for me, just watching this, it gets my adrenaline going. And that's, like I say, one of the things I've loved about video games in general, but one of the things I absolutely crave about Dungeons and Dragons games specifically. So, just taking a little break there while that happened, because honestly, I didn't think it was going to come through. I really didn't. They've made that encounter a lot harder. The original Boom Cheese, which was mentioned previously, and I'll go back through the chat here. Yeah, Dracula used the explosion pods. That's the original Boom Cheese. That's what we called it in the forums. That still works. You just have a lot less time to get it set up than you used to in the past, because of the turn limit that you have. You don't have unlimited turns anymore, and the whole restoration pod cheese no longer works. So the other cheeses about getting up on high ground and throwing caustic pods on the ground and that sort of stuff no longer work either because of the time limit. So it is much more based upon your abilities to manage your spells and your damage. The command spell, which we talked about earlier, Ian, or Ian, and I apologize if butchering names. Yes, you certainly can tell them to drop it. The command spell has a very low chance to hit if you're able to stun him and then get an attack that does daze and get that attack to land. Daze gives him disadvantage on wisdom saving throws. And then your 40% chance for the command spell to land now turns into a 65% chance for that spell to land. And since I only had one spell to use left, I couldn't refresh them with the restoration pod glitch. I had to make it count. So I was waiting for it to try to work, and we just never got to that point. So I needed to cause as much damage as I could, and that's why the 14 points of damage from Shadowheart's spell, Guiding Bolt, was such a big deal in that. So that was a non-cheesed run-through of the full version fight with Commander Zhalk. That's the third time I've done it. Like I say, this is the third playthrough that I've had. The first one televised, but in all three I have been able to do it just by managing my damage and my spell applications. But it's going to be very, very hard for somebody who doesn't know the ins and outs of D&D mechanics to make it work. Now, in your playthroughs, feel free to save right before you cast the command spell. You can save. If it doesn't work, you can reload it. You can try it again. Feel free to do that. I just will not save scum in my live stream playthroughs. Whatever the dice come up being is whatever the dice come up being, and I'm going to stick with it. So I'm very happy that that worked out the way it did. The irony of it is that I'm not even going to be using that sword. And we'll learn more about that later. So I'm just going to go around and do some searching here. So we have a clamshell we can pick up. And again, it's not worth selling a whole lot. I'm going to wait. If I level up now, I certainly can do the level up, but I've got a little bit of time. I might as well recruit some party members and then do a level up all at once to end the live stream. But yes, because you killed Commander Zhalk, you're going to come out with enough experience points to level up. You can access it from either here or inside your inventory screen. All of your characters that you recruit will now have the opportunity to level up to level 2 as soon as you recruit them. For a good portion of Act 1, except yes, it is the best sword for Lae'zel to have. Even if you're not a character that's going to use it, because I'm not going to. If you have Lae'zel in your party, yes, it is for a large portion of early access the best sword that she's ever going to have access to. So now we can see that Shadowheart is laying here on the ground, so we'll walk up and talk to her.
I need a quick word.
Again, if we reach for the artifact, she's going to know it and she's going to get upset with us, so I'm going to try and avoid that.
You're alive. I'm alive. How is this possible? I remember the ship. I remember falling. Then nothing. No, I don't recognize this place. But anything's an improvement on where we just came from. First things first, we need supplies, shelter, and most of all, a healer. We might have escaped, but we still have these little monsters in our heads. We need each other, and we both know what's at stake. Can't think of better company. One thing, just before we go. I wanted to thank you again for freeing me. It would have been all too easy for you to run right past my pod, but you didn't. I'll remember that. Lead the way.
Okay, so now you can see Shadowheart also has enough to level up. No, Oda, I am not going to go two-handed with this Paladin build. I am going to be your, what they would call sword and board Paladin, even though I'm actually not going to use a sword. We're going to learn a lot more about this as we go through. The opportunity for two-handed weapon damage Paladins is great, especially if you're able to take the Great Weapon Fighting, or the Great Weapon Master feat at level 4. So there are really good options for Paladins to be huge damage dealers. I also want to be a frontline tank Paladin that is able to not just dish out damage, but sacrifice a little bit of that damage to absorb damage in return. And for that, I need a high armor class to be able to do it. So getting a +3 from a shield is a huge bonus for me when it comes to my armor class. So, but yes, I won't actually be using a sword either, but we won't explore that until we get to at least level 4. For now, I'm going to use whatever weapons I come across to give me the best damage available to me. So for now, I'm going to be probably utilizing the Everburn Blade, but then once I get a little bit farther through some of these encounters, where it's not just hacking up small hit point enemies, I'm going to change, because I want to be able to tank a lot of these things.
No traps, please.
Okay, so we're just walking around and we're holding the Alt key, and we see we have some Murgrass over here. We're going to go pick it up. This is going to unlock a recipe. If you haven't played the full version, this is what the alchemy pouch is for. You can see that the Murgrass went in there. It's an alchemical ingredient. In the early access, it was nothing. We all expected it was going to be a crafting ingredient of some sort, but it was not labeled with anything. Well, now it tells you that it's part of an alchemical solution to create a potion of mind reading. Right? If you hit your H key, it brings up your alchemy menu. This lists all of the potions, elixirs, grenades, and coatings that you can craft inside the game using alchemy. So a potion of healing, if you click on it, it needs a salt of rogue's morsel and any suspension. So then you can go down here to salts, and I don't know how to make a salt of rogue's morsel yet. It's not there. Any suspension, I can go to suspensions and see that myrgrass, if I have 3 of them, I can make a suspension of myrgrass. So these alchemy ingredients let you craft sublimate, salts, essence, ashes, vitrials, and suspensions, and then you use those to craft potions, elixirs, grenades, and coatings. Right, so it's a multi-step process, but it will give you all the ingredients that you need, and you unlock those recipes as you pick up the individual alchemy items in the game. So holding Alt and watching out for them, always go pick them up. You can buy them from vendors and that sort of stuff as well, but if they're out here just waiting to be picked up, just hold the Alt key and you can see where they show up and you can walk over and pick them up. Exactly. So, science. So, I'm going to take all on the fish, and again, you'll see what happens. That fish goes into my camp supply pack, but again, my camp supply pack has carry weight. So that 0.2 pounds is reflected in my carry weight. You're about to see something that's going to blow your mind if you played early access. I'm going to click on the supply pack, I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to click on the fish. They implemented shift click. The most asked for quality of life improvement in the game, and they implemented it. So now with these both selected, I can right click and send to camp, and they both disappear. Now the shift click in the game is the Windows shift click, meaning if you click on one and then click on something down here, it's going to select everything in between. There is no control click, so you can't remove like the Everburn blade from that list. Okay? So it's still somewhat weird in that if you want to mark a bunch of things as wares, you need to spend a little time organizing things in your inventory so that you are able to say click here and then add to wares or send to camp. Or if you hit tab, I can now take all of these items, shift click them, and I can drag them to Shadowheart. And it moves all of the items at once to a different character. So huge, massive, big time change. So I'm going to add all of those to wares. I'm equipped with Scale Mail of Vengeance with an armor class of 14. Scale Mail's 14. She's wearing a chain shirt of 13, so I might as well give her a straight upgrade to her armor class. She's now 17. And I can mark that chain shirt as wares, and I'm going to end up selling it later. Now, like I said, the Everburn Blade is a huge increase in damage over what I have, 6 to 19 versus 4 to 11, so I'm going to equip it. That's going to unequip both my Warhammer and my shield, but I'm going to keep them for now. This burnished necklace is another wear. The Void Bulb I'm definitely going to keep. Looking at your inventory, you notice something else, and that we have 3 new slots up here. Our amulet and our rings have moved downward to make space for camp clothes. So I've got some boots here that I can equip. You can click this button here, and you can see what he looks like, or what she looks like when you're in camp. Okay? Whenever you go to camp, you're going to be wearing your camp clothes. Whenever you're out and about, or when you're getting ready to leave camp, you're going to be wearing your armor. And you can customize these clothes. And you'll see more about that as we go along here. So, let me... Oh, you can also read this book. It talks about the various oaths and that sort of stuff. I think we explained them fairly well in our character creation segment, though, so I don't think we need to talk about them. So that kind of gets my inventory organized a little bit. The onyx can also be wares, and the peridot can be wares. There's a reason I'm marking them as wares, and we're going to get to that probably not today. But as I was talking about with the camp supplies, you still want to send to camp. You do not want to keep them in your inventory. They take up carry weight. There's no need for them to take up your carry weight. So if you've got them, send them to camp. If you have to just click on one because it's laying on the ground to pick it up, then you can go to your pack and send them all to camp at once.
Fresh water.
So here, red apples, send to camp. The water and the gold I'm just going to take. The shanties for the Bitch Queen, you can read it. It's a lore book. You don't have, it doesn't serve any other purpose except being sold. Then you can see you can walk all the way out here, but there's nothing to do when you get out here. It was just opening up the minimap. Alright, so that kind of gives you an idea about what you're going to be doing for the remainder here. I'm going to do a quick search around here, and then I'm going to go look at a couple of other party members. And then I think what we're going to do is start off the next live stream with our level up. I think it's going to take the remainder of the live stream for me to search these areas out here and recruit those last two party members, and I think we're going to be out of time to do the level up. That will give you something to look forward to when you come back next week for the level up. So here we have a perfumed letter. Now I'm going to take this, and if you look at your inventory, you can read it. Is what it was in early access. It's a letter from Anna to Sai, professing her love and saying that she wants to meet him in Baldur's Gate. In early access, we were never able to get to the city. Now we're able to. So maybe picking up this letter and holding on to it and presenting that letter to Anna and letting her know that I found this letter on your dead lover. Maybe that gives her some closure. Maybe that gives her, maybe you might get a reward for letting her know about it. So these items that in early access might not have done anything might actually do something in this version. So you have to think about that when you're deciding whether or not you want to throw away something that in early access you might have just tossed out. So I'm going to hold on to all those things and just put them in my camp. So here we've got Belladonna. As soon as you pick it up, you open up a new recipe. You unlock a new recipe. There's some more myrgrass over here. There's some dagger root. And again, opened up a new recipe. The first time you pick up any alchemy ingredient, you're going to unlock a recipe that goes along with it. After that, it's just going to put it in your inventory and store it.
More of those wretched things.
Okay, so we saw on our mini-map, we saw a couple of yellow icons. Intellect Devourers. Those Intellect Devourers, we have another Mangled Fisher we can search here. Then we'll come back to this area. Now as we move up here, we're going to go into hiding. Since we're in a group, it toggles everybody together. We're going to slowly move into this room, and now you can see that those Intellect Devourers have moved up here. And they have red icons. They are now hostile, so as soon as they see us, they're going to go hostile. It's a very interesting question, and I do not know if you can or not. It would seem like a contradiction, and that would be hard-coded to violate one of your oaths. However, the closest one you might be able to work with it is vengeance. You certainly shouldn't be able to do it, I wouldn't think, with an oath of devotion. But who knows?
Please protect
A lot of things might be permissible in this game because, you know, they're hard-coded to be a particular way. So what I'm going to do is move up here, and I'm going to initiate a surprise attack against one of these Intellect Devourers. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm going to let Shadowheart do this.
I can't afford to fail.
Yeah, that's the great thing about it. I've actually done a bunch of testing on my own in my personal live stream, so that's the great thing about it. You can always load it up and try it. See what happens. Okay, so I'm going to wait for this Intellect Devourer to turn around and go the opposite way. And once it gets far away, I'm going to initiate an attack on this Intellect Devourer here and start combat. I rolled horribly, so they're all surprised. They were all surprised for one turn, but now that surprise is going to wear off at the start of next turn. So I'm going to again try and just make my combat work around that. And to do that, I'm going to try and keep my distance as much as I can, because Intellect Devourers don't jump. So you can also see what I've done is I've kept my Paladin out of combat. The only one who's in combat right now is Shadowheart. So now, Yorval, since he's not in combat, he doesn't have the combat cross swords icon, I can move him wherever I want. I am not bound by movement restrictions, or action restrictions, or anything that I would be in turn-based mode. I can move my Paladin around wherever I feel like it now. And as long as I don't get detected by one of these red areas, I'm not going to enter into combat. So I'm going to take my Paladin, and I'm going to move him up here. There's a reason for that. I'll explain that here in a second. And now with Shadowheart, I'm going to end her turn. The Intellect Devourers are going to dash toward me. And now, because of the direction that they're facing, all of those red areas, which were around in here, all those red areas are now down here. So now I can get around behind all of these Intellect Devourers and make attacks against them with my melee weapon. Whereas previously I was only able to attack this one. Now I can attack any of them that I want. So I prefer to get an attack against one of these higher damage or higher hit point Intellect Devourers. So that's what we're going to do. Instant kill. So instead of spending my 18 points of damage against a 9 hit point enemy, I could spend it against a 10 hit point or 11 or 12 and possibly get more damage against them. Alright? So now I can switch back to Shadowheart, and Shadowheart can try and kill this Intellect Devourer. It does 2 to 9, and this is 6 hit points, so she has about a 45% chance of getting a kill with this. If I try Sacred Flame, she's got a 33% chance to kill, and only about a 10% chance to kill here with Firebolt. So I think she's just going to go ahead and try her standard ranged attack on this one and see if we roll high. And we didn't. So now I'm going to go ahead and end her turn as well, and we'll see what the Intellect Devourers do. Okay, so they both came after me. So now Shadowheart can finish this one off with a 95% chance to hit. She can hold her turn. She still has a heal left, just in case I miss. So I'm going to reserve her turn or hold her action. And now I can try a pommel strike here. Okay, so that dazed him. And since I don't have an action left on this turn, I'm going to go ahead and use a heal. Actually, I will illustrate something else. I'm going to move Shadowheart down here. If you don't know, you can throw healing potions. Now, I can't throw it because to throw it is an action. The throw, you can see, is an action. So I forgot about that before I made my ranged attack. But you can throw healing potions on people to heal them. So I don't have that option available to me, so I'm just going to cast a healing spell. But keep that in the back of your mind, that if you're trying to heal somebody before they get attacked, you can throw healing potions at them.
Still breathing, despite everything.
And there's nothing I can do here on my turn. So it missed. That's great. And Shadowheart was able to end the combat.
Perhaps our survival isn't such a distant prospect.
Okay, so just keep that in mind. With healing potions, with status effect potions, you can throw them at your party members to give them the benefits of those potions. It takes an action to do it. So now looking up here, holding Alt, you can see we have a chest. We have an Oil of Accuracy. That was not in early access, that's new to the full version. And we have a Void Bulb and a Spiked Bulb, as well as a Potion of Healing. Okay, so we have a Nobleman down here. Some cheese, some weapons. We can go up here and search this dead Mind Flayer. No, you can miss, that's the thing, and I will try and illustrate it here. I will move down here. Great. See what I talk about the pathing?
Looking ahead.
Of this game. Okay, so Shadowheart,
Whatever it takes.
if I right click and I throw, you can see there's a 60% chance that she's actually going to throw it and hit her target down there. Okay. So the farther you are away from her, the more that number decreases. So if you move out to her throwing range, and throwing range is based upon strength.
No time to waste.
So once you get outside of her throwing range, which is out here, that number starts dropping off dramatically. She'll have disadvantage on that throw.
Never a dull moment.
Our food always camp supplies. With almost all of the food you're going to find, yes, it's a camp supply. There are a few items which look like food, which also grant you healing or status effects like restoration and that sort of stuff. You just need to look at the description to see if it's just a camp supply or not. So right now, if you click on any of these, you'll see it just says camp supplies. If you look on something and it says it also gives you like 3d4 healing, then it acts like a healing potion. Okay, you just need to look at the descriptions to see. So here I know we have another clamshell out here. We can loot these crates. Got some thieves' tools. We have some belladonna over here that we can pick up. We have some myrgrass down here by the shore.
Bag of holding.
We also have another clamshell out here we can pick up. Now we can go up here, and we have a locked wooden trunk. I could try and pick that using the thieves' tools I just picked up. I'm just going to hold off on it. There's no real reason for me to do it right now. And might as well use my lay on hands on me to get my hit points back. And I'm going to continue exploring and moving in small movements. You don't want to just click all the way up there. The reason for that is as you're walking through unexplored areas, there are hidden things around you, and you need to pass a perception check to be able to see them, or sometimes a survival check, or a bunch of other skill checks. If you click way up there, all 4 of your characters may walk by that particular place, and all 4 of them might fail the check. Whereas if you walk in slow movements, you might, just the first character in your party may fail a check, and then you can break your group apart. You can use something like Shadowheart's guidance to buff up another character and have them move up and try and make the same skill check, but now they have an additional buff to try and pass that ability check.
Still alive.
So when you're exploring areas for the first time, when you're opening up the map, don't make large click movements, or you might end up failing checks on stuff that you just won't ever be able to find. Okay, move in small movements like this, and when you get there, then move on another small movement. It's just one of the tips for the game here and how you're gonna try and work it. So I'm gonna head down here and we're gonna try this, and then we're gonna go recruit Astarion, and that's probably going to be and Gale, and that's probably going to be the end of the live stream. I'm going to toggle my group. Going to take Shadowheart. I'm going to have her cast guidance on herself, and I'm going to have her walk over here. And she was successful in her nature check. We can look, she succeeded in a nature check. The DC of this check is 10. She rolled a 12. So even without guidance, she would have passed it. But guidance gave her a 15 roll. If she would have rolled a 7, she would have failed it. But with the +3 on guidance, then she would have passed it. So that's what I mean about if you know you're going into an area where you need to find something, do it one character at a time, because each character only gets a single chance to pass that passive check. And you don't want everybody failing it without the benefit of any buffs. I'm going to move up here and I'm going to click and drag on this rock and move it out of the way. And there's an ornate chest underneath. So we have a Harper's notebook, which we can read. Nothing in it. It's just, it explains, it just tells you it's a Harper's book. However, the Harper's map, when you read it, this has a map on it. Little harp marks an area called Moonrise Towers, and a small inky crescent sketched into the nearby forest. Below the crescent is a recent scroll marked Cache. So if we pick that up, we can pick up all of these things. The ruby is worth a lot of gold. 2 potions of speed, which are amazing. We can pick up all of those. And now, once we look at our map, we now have a new waypoint, or a hidden cache that has popped up. We're going to be exploring that a bit later in our playthrough.
On my way.
But if you don't pass that perception check, or that nature check, you can't pick up and move the rock. If you can't move the rock, you can't get the chest. If you can't get the chest, you can't get the map. And if you can't get the map, you can't get that location of that hidden cache, and you might miss it. It's still there. Okay? It's just, this lets you know that you're going to be passing near it, and you're definitely not going to miss it, because it is in a location where if you're not paying attention to the verticality in the game, you may overlook it. I have not tried the Dark Urge yet. There, like I say, I've got 3 full version playthroughs going at the same time right now, and one of them is not the Dark Urge. It is something I will be exploring, but not right now in any of my currently thought about playthroughs that I have planned. There's so much content in the full version that, like I said at the outlet, if you want to see a 100% playthrough on a live stream, 3 hours a day, once a week, it's going to take probably a year for me to finish this. Okay, so it's been a while since we did a save, so we'll make sure we do that, and we'll go up here and we'll talk to Astarion.
Very well.
Actually, before we do that, darn it.
I've got one of those brain things cornered. There, in the grass. You can kill it, can't you? Like you killed the others?
Okay, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna switch to Shadowheart. I'm gonna have her cast Guidance on the person who is currently in conversation and have him go back to the conversation. If you didn't know you could do that, yes, you can.
There. Can you see it?
That gives me a better chance of passing that perception check, but I still failed it.
Not a sound. Not if you want to keep that darling neck of yours. Now, I saw you on the ship, didn't I? Not?
Okay, so you have some options here. I could headbutt him here. I've got strength and melee weapon proficiency. I'm just going to nod for now, though.
Splendid. And now you're going to tell me exactly what you and those tentacle freaks did to me. Don't lie to me.
Your mind twists. You're looking out of unfamiliar eyes, prowling dark, busy streets. You try to hold the memory, but it fades to the worm. The light, the fear.
What was that? What's going on?
Sorry, I was drinking some water. Oh, oh boy, sorry. Oh, wow. Tried to choke myself on some water there. My voice actually still isn't back to normal. Oh, wow. My eyes are watering and everything. I apologize. Sorry. Trying not to cough into the mic there. I apologize. So I'm going to do a strength check here. And you see I now have guidance as well cast on me. So failed miserably. It's a rather high DC to be able to pass.
A fine effort. But I've seen it all. I was walking this land while your ancestors were learning to crawl. Now tell me, what just happened? What was that? Yes. Yes, that has to be it. You're not one of them. They took you. Same as they took me. I'm half tempted to spill your guts all over the dirt anyway, but for now... apologies. A kindred spirit. My name's Astarion. I was in Baldur's Gate when those beasts snatched me. Is that so? We clearly move in different circles. So, do you know anything about these worms? Turn us into... Of course it'll turn me into a monster. What else did I expect? Although, it hasn't happened yet. If we can find an expert, someone that can control these things, there might still be time. You know, I was ready to go this alone, but maybe sticking with the herd isn't such a bad idea. And you seem like a useful person to know. All right. I accept. Lead on.
Oh boy, this is why I love chat. Those were some great failed the survival check in real life and -5 dex on drinking water. Yeah, that was that was horrible. I think my voice is back to normal now, but oh wow, that was pretty bad. Yes, what a wimpy orc. You know, the DC on a strength check against a rogue who has an 8 strength, I don't think it should be 15. That just doesn't make any sense to me. That strength check against a higher strength character should not have been that high for me to have to pass. It really shouldn't have. But it's a game. What can I say? He's going to join you one way or another there. So, but yeah, there was another comment that they decreased the ruby price. Yeah, for those of you who saw it, the ruby is now worth a lot less gold. It used to be a huge value in early access. You're going to learn, though, why that price is decreased and why it really doesn't matter that it's been decreased so much as we go through this. Something else has changed a lot from early access to the full version, and you're going to see that when we get to our first trader. So we'll go over here, we'll deal with the Mind Flayer encounter, then we'll go recruit Gale, and it should be the end of our live stream.
No time for Danny. Let us start a conversation.
You approach the dying monster. This is the thing that abducted you. You could end its life here and now, if only you didn't feel compassion. Compassion. You can't move, can't think. Thinking is mercifully done for you. It will be a joy to serve, to die for it an honor. It's possessing your mind, forcing you to love it, but then the feeling slips. The creature's mind seems to focus elsewhere.
Okay, so we have an intelligence check here that we can do. DC of 10. It's a 50-50 shot. However, we can add in guidance. Guidance is one of the most overpowered cantrips in the game, and you always need to have either somebody in the party who can cast it or have some sort of item that can cast it when you're dealing with encounters where you're going to have skill checks. It's just a must. Don't think twice about it, just do it. And that is a 1. That icon with the Mind Flayer skull on it is a 1. So in that case, it doesn't really matter if I have guidance or not, because this game is hard-coded to give 1s as critical failures. Now, that's not D&D 5e rules. D&D 5e rules, that infamous page like 243 or whatever it is in the DM's guide, does not say that 1 is an auto-failure and that 20 is an auto-success. It does not say that. They've hard-coded it, however, into the game, and this is the same as previous Baldur's Gate games, so just accept the fact that if you get a 1, you're always going to fail it. If you get a 20, you're always going to pass it. It's just how it's going to work. It doesn't matter what the final roll would turn out to be with all your bonuses. If you get a 1, you're going to fail it.
You try to break through, but its mind is impenetrable. With a last surge of defiance, it slaps your efforts away. The monster lies exhausted, defeated. Its eyes, wet orange pearls, radiate malice.
That's actually a good question, Ian.
Death is too good for it.
For those of you who don't know, there is an option here called Karmic Dice. In early access, this was broken. And it was broken toward the enemy, meaning you were going to get hit and saved against a lot more than you would be saving or hitting. I expect that in the full version, it has been fixed. However, what this does is if you enable it, it avoids failure streaks. So if you rolled 4 failures in a row on your dice, the game would artificially, and not 4, that's a made-up random number, but if you rolled a certain number of failures in a row, the game would artificially increase your next roll to avoid having a whole bunch of failures in a row. That is anathema to me. And I don't want to say that it's not part of D&D rules, because there is a karma in 5e variant rules. However, this is not something that I think should have been added. It's been a point of contention for a long time, but it really helps you keep from being frustrated and giving up on the game because you rolled 5 failures in a row and you just get upset. I just believe that wherever the dice land is wherever the dice land. So that's what we're going to get, and that's what we're going to take throughout these playthroughs. So, but you can turn on karmic dice and hopefully avoid a long string of failures if you're just, like I say, not able to deal with the frustration that normal RNG dice rolls can give you, both good and bad. So I prefer not to mess with karma, just letting it go as it is. But that option is certainly there. It's turned on by default, by the way. So if you start the game, Ian instead of Ian, like I say, I'm going to mispronounce everybody's name in chat. You just have to let me know. But if it is turned on by default when you start your game, so you'll have to go in and turn it off if you don't want to do that.
Dead goblins over there. Worth checking for supplies, maybe.
Okay, so just some more healing potions and some basic weapons. Oh yeah, absolutely. And in tabletop, dice failures, especially your criticals, your 1s and your 20s, the DM has incredible latitude due to how 1s and 20s are supposed to work in Dungeons and Dragons rules to do some incredibly hilarious things. Like, you take a swing at somebody with your axe and you roll a 1. Not only do you miss, but you miss so badly that on your downstroke with the axe, you swing it into the top of your foot. And you do, you roll damage against yourself. I mean, you can do so many hilarious things with it. And that's why I love tabletop so much, is because you get a creative dungeon master and things can get really, really good. So we're gonna walk up here and we're gonna do this with Jorval, and we're gonna walk up or Jorval, and walk up and click on this sigil here.
What's going on with that rope?
You approach the sigil on the stone. Magic glitters and swirls from it erratically, as if malfunctioning. It looks slightly dangerous.
A hand? Anyone?
Okay, so here we have some options. I can make a strength check, and that's why I am doing this with my Paladin. To grab the hand and pull, it's a DC of 7. Shadowheart's nearest, so I can add in guidance.
That's it! Go on! Keep pulling! Oh. Hello. I'm Gale of Waterdeep. Apologies. I'm usually better at this. A bit shocked, but friend, it's a relief and a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Say, but I know you, don't I? In a manner of speaking. You were on the Nautiloid as well. And I can only assume you too were on the receiving end of a rather unwelcome insertion in the ocular region. The insertee we speak of, this parasite, are you aware that after a period of excruciating gestation, it will turn us into mind flayers? It's a process known as ceramorphosis, and let me assure you, it is to be avoided. You don't happen to be a cleric by any chance, do you? A doctor? Surgeon? Uncannily adroit with a knitting needle?
You seem to know enough about our condition to realize it's beyond most clerics' skills.
Most, no doubt, but I find myself hoping to be in the presence of the few. You don't happen to be one of them. As we've established, few enough can. It's not exactly a common affliction. We're most certainly going to need a healer, and soon, too. How about we lend each other a helping hand once more and look for a healer together? Most excellent. A parasite shared is a parasite halved, or something to that effect. Oh, but before you think you're about to embark on a journey with most ill-mannered a man, thank you for pulling me out of that stone. It was an act of foresighted kindness, I assure you. For I have the feeling ample opportunities will present themselves for me to return the favor.
Okay, so we've recruited Gale, and ironically enough, this is the party composition that we are going to have through a lot of the playthrough. Our Paladin serves as a frontline tank and damage dealer, while also having some backup abilities for healing and buffing or debuffing. But Shadowheart is going to be our main support caster. Gale is going to be our main damage caster. And Astarion is our support role. The person who is going to be there for lockpicking chests, doors, pickpocketing as we need it, and that sort of stuff. Astarion, as a pure rogue, though, comes with a bonus, as we've seen in some of the other playthroughs, that he can do some really decisive damage when he needs to. And we're going to be taking advantage of that throughout the playthrough. But this is going to be the main party makeup. Now, as I said, once I get to multiclassing, much farther down the road after level 5, we're probably going to start looking at swapping Shadowheart out for possibly one of the Hireling Bard. We're going to have to do some experiments with it once we've looked at our multi-class and see how well that works. I've done some initial experiments with it, and I kind of like how it works. I also kind of don't like how it works in certain aspects, but I do have a plan for that. But as we go through the playthrough, that might get modified. Who knows? We'll have to kind of wait and see. So I think this gives you a good idea about what the party makeup is going to be, and a good introduction to the full version if you've never played it before. We have not seen really what a paladin can do. We'll not be able to see what a paladin can really start doing until we do our level up. And we gain the main skill that paladins are known for. And that is Divine Smite. And we will explain how that works, all the ins and outs of it during our character level ups, and we will also get to see our first taste of how it's going to work when we start making our way through the Overgrown Ruins and the chapel itself on our next live stream. So I know it would be nice if I'd be able to sit here for the next 3 hours, but there comes a point where I think we need to call an end to it, and I think 3 hours is a good time, as we've seen through our previous live streams. So feel free to leave a comment if you have any more any questions or comments about the live stream. Ways that you would like to see me do things, if at all possible, and I'll see what I can accommodate. Or if you have questions about what you've seen or what might be happening in the future, feel free to leave a comment. And at this point, being such a small streamer, I'm still able to read all of my comments and respond to them as best I can. So I'll get back to you as quick as I can on them. So I think that gets us into a good spot. We're going to have a good spot to start out with next week's live stream on Sunday with some good level ups and some explanation of what the Paladin can really do. So, as always, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today. It's amazing. Without your support, none of this would be possible. This is Commander Jorval saying until next time, fare thee well.